got two of y'all up here. I don't count.
It's gonna be a short meeting.
Maybe.
What's going on? How you
How you
doing?
doing, Lee?
So where's the new guy?
I don't know. Wouldn't know him if I saw him.
I'm like you, I wouldn't either.
You got a name tag?
Got 4 o'clock. We're 4.
Huh.
We're gonna get moving. We got a short agenda and a lot of people.
I think they're about
Somebody came up and asked me if you can only catch it if you can see it coming.
filling in for me,
For Walton County,
and
Florida.
she's ready. So just start the audio.
You just do the long ones now? You just do the long ones now?
Yeah, I guess so. I'll see y'all next time.
Thanks, Karen.
Where'd Matt go? Well. All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. I know Mac's going to be back in just a second. So we'll start off with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would, please stand. Bow your head. Lord, we just thank you so much for the amazing opportunities you give us in this great country, and we just ask that you be with us tonight and give us wisdom and discernment so that we make the decisions that are right for the people of Walton County. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Mac. Well, let's see. We got everybody have a chance to look over the minutes from the April 14 meeting.
Why don't we introduce our new member?
Let me finish this, okay?
Okay.
Why don't we go to this first, then we'll come back to that. Minutes for the last meeting. Everybody have a chance to read through them? Did they look good?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. We got a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Now, we'll move on to announcements. And yes, we do have a new member on the board, Rob Arnold. Rob, very nice to have you here. We put you up front because that's where most of the flack comes from the audience, so.
Okay.
You know, get your feet wet early.
So in welcoming you to the board, do you have any experience with planning commissions anywhere else?
Well, sir, this is my first meeting.
And do you know the land development codes and all that good stuff?
Well, I've read through them, but you know, I'm still.
Well, if you don't know much, you'll be a good fit around here.
Yes, sir. I
You
hope
really
to be.
will.
I hope to be.
Welcome to the planning commission.
Very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Mac, if you could, we got some announcements, right?
Yes, sir. We do have one continuance this afternoon, the watercolor PUD amendment for beach ADA access. We have a request to continue to the June 9th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting at 4 p.m. in this location.
Okay. We have a request for a continuance. We have a motion.
I'll make a motion to continue.
Motion, we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thanks, Mac.
Thank you. And now I think our engineer has arrived, so we have no further announcements. And the first item would be the Beauline Apartments.
Mr. Carpenter, these are all quasi-judicial, I believe, tonight?
Yes, sir.
All right, so because these are quasi-judicial proceedings, anyone wishing to offer testimony must be sworn. So anyone wishing to speak on item 3, the Beauline Apartments on Goldsby Road, item 4, the Dravinska rezoning, and item 5, the Emerald Bay rezoning, please stand, raise your right hand to be sworn in at this time. If you are not sworn in, you will not be allowed to speak in quasi-judicial proceedings. So now's your chance. Go ahead. If you choose not to speak, that's okay too. Raise your right hand, repeat after me. I do hereby swear or affirm
I do hereby swear or affirm
that the testimony I present
the testimony I present
will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff and the audience are now sworn.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mac.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item was reviewed by Stephen Shawn. I'll ask him to introduce it for us.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Stephen Schoen, Planning and Development Services. I've been sworn. The first item in front of you this evening is the Beauline Apartments of Goldsby Road. This is a request to approve by final order project number MAJ 22-000005 is a major development order application submitted by Nautilus Civil Engineers on behalf of Goldsby, Florida LLC. They're requesting to develop 162 apartments and clubhouse on 9.8 plus or minus acre district of general commercial. The property is located in District 4 and identified by the parcel ID in your staff report. If I could please enter the loose staff report, that is a revised version, into the record, as well as the loose email that staff recently received. I don't know why that was difficult to say, but please enter those in the record.
Yes, that's good.
Thank you. I wanted to point out a couple of things before we get too far into the weeds with this one. As you can see, as part of the staff report, there is a recorded direct developers agreement. That's from 2020. That was in conjunction with a future land use map amendment that was approved at the time. You will also see an amended developers agreement. This was requested by staff and acquiesced by the applicant to come into compliance or conformity, if you will, to some of the new standards that we would like to see in developers agreements. The actual development itself has been reviewed by staff and has been determined to meet the comprehensive plan and the land development code. I can answer any technical questions you may have as it relates to the staff report. If you don't, I will turn it over to the agent.
Any questions for staff?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
On 5/4 of 2022, that was 8 days ago, the development was listed as non-compliant regarding the floodplain. Is that still in effect?
That is not. That should not be in the revised version. That is loose from your packet. After that day, there was communication between the applicant and our floodplain reviewer. They have come to an understanding. The applicant, I believe, submitted a revised study or an upgraded study addressing the comments of the floodplain reviewer, and she has been satisfied and believes it meets the comp plan and the land development code.
Okay, so when did the revised come out, the revision?
The revised staff report?
Correct.
So the revised staff report should have been completed or would have been completed after the publication date. You may see an error that the revision date is not correct. But I will tell you that the plan was, or the staff report was revised to reflect that change.
And if I've got any technical questions, I need to save those for the engineer, correct?
I can certainly try to answer anything that you may have, but if I don't know the answer, I will defer to the engineer.
I was just wondering what changed over 8 days, and was there another study, or from the day that it originally came out as non-compliant? I was just wondering what in 8 days has changed. Was it a paperwork exercise, or did something take place?
So it was, and I won't speak out of turn, and I will defer to the engineer to speak to the specifics of the changes, but it's not something that changed over 8 days. It was something that they had been working to answer and to get addressed over the time of the application itself. So it's been at least a month, and I think it was just something that the agent has been working on, but I will defer to him.
Okay, the next thing is there was a letter from Dewberry dated April 5th, 2022, stating that the project did not meet Walton County land development codes. Can you elaborate on that?
I will say,
Transportation, yes, it was a transportation issue, and if it would help, I have a copy of that letter.
it may help, but no, I would not be able to speak to how Dewberry was satisfied. I would just say that they were satisfied upon resubmittal.
I'm getting the impression that it was satisfied through what is known as the proportionate fair share. In other words, it was a buyout.
Let me refer further back in here. Okay.
This project impacts some deficient sections of adjacent roadways, and in accordance with ordinance 2007-10, they are able to pay a proportionate fair share fee to offset and mitigate those deficiencies.
And to be clear, proportionate fair share is not one of our buyout programs.
It is not a buyout.
It's a requirement when there is a transportation deficiency.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, the transportation deficiency, the way I understand it, is that there's going to be additional turn lanes put on, a right turn lane, a left turn lane, and major improvements done. Is that correct?
There are some operational improvements associated with this project. Yes, sir.
Well, I can't give you chapter and verse, but I could show you out of the Land Development Code book. It mentions that the county shall join with the developer in applying for and processing the necessary governmental application permits to construct the roadway and multi-use lane improvements. Has there been any communication with helping the developer file for these permits, and do you know how much it's going to cost? Is the cost going to be, and I think significantly higher than the buyout? And if it is, have you checked with Melissa to see if we have the funds to do that?
Are we going to have to pay for this project? No, sir. We are
No,
not paying for this project. The developer will pay all costs associated with those improvements.
Above and beyond the buyout fee?
They will pay for the operational improvements that their traffic study required, that Public Works required, and any of those improvements that are operational can be offset by the proportionate fair share payment. The applicant's engineer can probably give you some specific numbers that you're looking for, if you'd like that.
I would, thank you.
Curtis, would you like to respond to that?
I don't,
Or do you want to do it?
Yeah, why don't we wait for the applicant to have their opportunity to present? We are in a quasi-judicial proceeding. We've gotten a little ahead of ourselves with some of this.
Yes. Thank you. I would, I'm not sure if you, it took me a minute to find it, but there is an updated transportation concurrency review in the staff report. It's right before the inserts that the applicant has provided us that does address the proportionate fair share fee as well as the impacted roadway segments.
Will these roadway segments be required to be completed before the project is completed?
Typically, that's not
No, sir.
necessarily how it works.
No, sir. No, sir. They're not required to be completed. The operational improvements are, but the roadway segments are not.
Okay. A lot of my questions are because I'm trying to learn. If you're going to impact with a lot more people and a lot more density and a lot more vehicles, would it be more prudent to get the road situation, the transportation situation made so that it doesn't create a public safety problem?
I don't believe this is creating a public safety problem, but this is the system that we have that the board approved in ordinance 2007-10 on July 10, 2007.
Do you feel like there's some room for improvement here?
We're proposing some improvements. We had a workshop before the BCC meeting on Tuesday to discuss that, an interim program that we could immediately move to. The board has given us positive direction to move towards that.
So whether this road improvement project is completed or worked on at the same time that this development is being worked on, that's probably not going to happen.
Not sure that's the case, no.
I'm just want some reassurance that if we're adding a lot more traffic, we're going to have the road improvements that's necessary.
We have the roadway mitigation program in place that the board has adopted. Yes, sir. We are following the law.
Thank you.
Steve and I had a question about the developer agreement.
Yes, sir.
You said there were some changes. Is that the first amendment to the developer agreement?
That is the, The applicant just wanted me to let the board know that this will be part of his presentation, but I'm happy to address your question. Yes, you'll see in there is a recorded developers agreement and there is an first amended developers agreement. I may be butchering the title there, but it's something very similar to that. If you let me get to it, I will.
So is this require a separate approval, or is this part of the package that we're considering tonight to approve?
So this was part of the conditional approval from technical review because there is an existing amendment and the applicant took it upon themselves, essentially to appease staff, request to come into more conformity with what we would like to see now. It is, regardless, an amendment to a recorded and signed agreement that will need to be approved by the board.
My question is, are we approving that now as part of this package?
It is not necessarily something that, it's not what your typical developer's agreement that you may be thinking of in the past, where it's two separate applications. This is,
Once a developer's agreement has been approved, and you do see them at your level when the first developer agreement comes around, once the board enters into an agreement, it is the exclusive province of the Board of County Commissioners and a legislative determination to address amendments to that. It is being presented to you not for approval or rejection today, but for your informational purposes as part of this. The BCC will be the entity that must vote on the amendment and approve it. It has to be executed by the chairman, but it's outside of this board's purview, given the fact we already have an approved and recorded developers agreement.
thank you for that
Well, they're not
clarity.
looking for a recommendation from us on this issue at all?
The developer's agreement's already been entered into. The process for amending a developer's agreement is a separate process altogether and rests solely with the BCC's process. It is not part of your recommendation packet.
Okay, the date on this document is May 4th. Has the public had adequate opportunity to review this?
The developers agreement?
Yeah.
It's been in the portal since it was submitted around that time. I
I'm
believe.
seeing an undated document. Is there a dated document in the amended packet? I'm showing as of the blank day of blank 2022.
Oh, I'm looking down at the bottom of the page. It's a version.
Oh, of the
May
staff
4th.
report?
Yeah.
The staff report was revised after the floodplain management comments were addressed, and that was submitted.
That's a footer. That's not the.
That is, yes, that
all right.
has nothing to do with the developer's agreement, sorry.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
So that I'm crystal clear on this, Counselor, if we wanted to recommend that in the developer's agreement, that the traffic safety issues and questions be addressed and completed before a certificate of occupancy is given, is that anything that we can do at this level?
No, sir. It's outside your purview tonight.
But if the BCC wanted to issue some type of amendment to the developer's agreement, like that intersection has to be completed and sidewalks in place and safety provisions given, then they can do it at their level?
Respectfully, Commissioner Cosin, I'm not going to address that at this time because it's not been presented as a consideration. Because developers agreements are bargained for exchanges, we talked about contract zoning a little bit the last time. The simple reality is it would be premature to discuss whether the BCC can unilaterally impose additional conditions to an amended developers agreement that's not gone through the full process. So could they choose to take that up? That would be a discussion that the BCC would have to direct staff to have to come forward. All that is being presented as part of this discussion from a developer's agreement standpoint is the amendment that is being offered to the previously recorded one. So generally, board does not initiate changes to developers' agreements. It's accepted as the general rule of thumb.
Sounds like I'm beating a dead horse. Thank you.
Can I answer any more questions?
Anybody else got any questions for staff? Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Okay, the applicant ready? No, sir, not right now. We'll bring public comments up later. Soon as the applicant's finished, then we'll go into public comments and you'll be able to speak then.
Good evening, everyone. Curtis Smith with Nautilus Civil Engineers, SMITH. I've got a little presentation here for you. Pretty much every question you guys ask already is part of this presentation, so hopefully we can get that working. So I can explain a few of those things to you.
We're not on either. It's up now.
Working great.
All right.
All right, so Beauline Apartments, some call it Bowline. I think we've settled on Beauline. This project, I started back in 2019. We did the rezoning for this project that went to general commercial. It's a pretty lengthy process back then. Some of you know were here at that time. And at that time, this project was rezoned very specifically to do a workforce housing apartments project. So after a couple of years of finding the right builders and the right program of contractors to get this to work, we now have a full and final fleshed out design. So what you see here in front of you is the site plan. We've got 162 apartment units. The developer's agreement and the zoning that was put into place allowed for up to 167, I believe, based on the density allowed. Because these developers have a prototype program that allows them to build the workforce housing project affordably, it made more sense to do 162 units because that's what fit inside their building floor plates. So we have the 162 units, and of that, they are proposing the 20% workforce housing. I'll let Jeff come up here. I'm sorry, Adam. Adam and Jeff are brothers, sorry, with Brockville. Actually, do you want to do now or later on? Let's do the technical since those questions came up, and he can come up after and talk a little bit about Brockville's program. So as I said, we started this in 2019, 2020. Back then, you know, it was then and still is now a very important topic to get some workforce housing in this area. We had some presentations on, you know, the things that are in this particular zone, including all the commercial that needs workforce, and this project was a great location for that. This will answer the question about the developer's agreement. So the very important part about this is, the laser pointer is not going to work, but I highlighted it. This is really the only thing that's being amended is to define what that workforce housing component was. We didn't do a great job explaining this in the TRC meeting. There's a lot of questions from the public, so that's why I put it up here and highlighted it. So this line, since then, Steve Hall has come in and has made this process a lot better. It's a lot more fleshed out. But the line that we in question was the workforce housing was defined as the Florida Statute 420-5095 3A. So that was pretty much the definition in the agreement back then, so you had to go to statute and find that. Nowadays, it's actually defined in the agreement fully, or what that means. So the amendment, for clarity, is simply stating that the original developer's agreement defined workforce housing as this in the Florida statutes of 2019. And then the amendment actually says what that definition was in the 2019 Florida statute. In addition to that, this Exhibit B was produced and added to the amendment that actually just states that there are 162 units now. At the time, we didn't know how many there would actually be. So since there are 162 units, there are exactly 32 workforce housing units, and it's defining them as the bedroom types and that sort of thing that they will be. Now, when that's done, they'll actually fill in the blanks on the dollar amounts and that sort of thing. So all this to say, this is not what's being heard before this board tonight, but the purpose of this was just to define what that means. There's nothing else that's being amended inside that developer's agreement. All of the things about transportation, traffic, those things, that all remains exactly the same as it was originally written. So one thing that was in the original developer's agreement that I wanted to just point out for this project, at that time, we knew, the public spoke about the intersection there at Goldsby. We knew that that intersection was a pain point for some in that area. So we proposed at that time that we'll have this project pay to split a turn lane at that location. We also did a signal warrant analysis at that time. It did not warrant a signal. And also at the time, the Board of County Commissioners stated very clearly, we don't want to see another signal on 98. So we, based on those two things, we said, we're going to make this as good as we can without the traffic signal. So we said that we'll have this project paid to split those lanes on a right turn and left turn coming out. In addition to that, we will provide an 8-foot multi-use path, the standard asphalt multi-use path, from the project site all the way down Goldsby Road to connect at 98. At the time, we also knew that US 98 had already been designed for widening, and that work is going on today, as some of you have probably seen as you drive out there. 98 is being widened into a 6-lane divided highway, and there's also a 10-foot multi-use path on the south side going in, and there's a 6-foot, I believe, sidewalk on the north side going in, and that's going from Mac Bayou to the west end of 30A.
While we're on this subject, will you entertain questions?
No, we're not going to entertain questions until he's finished. Go ahead.
So I wanted to state what those were because that was kind of the plan when the agreement was put in place. And what we wrote in the agreement was we want this project to go ahead and pay for and make these improvements. And any prop fair share that is due from this project will be used to make those improvements for the public transportation system. So that's kind of it on the developer's agreement. Hopefully that clarifies things of what that original agreement was and how it's being amended. The amendment is purely to define exactly what workforce housing was because it was gray on the original amendment, on the original agreement, I'm sorry. Next topic I want to cover, this is a big topic for everyone these days in our area, is stormwater considerations. This project, we went way above and beyond on stormwater. These are just a couple little things that we've got on this. We have community stormwater management ponds. We're aerating them with fountains. We've got some little community signage to just direct people. These are stormwater management ponds, help them keep it clean. If you see any problems, report it to management. Don't dump anything in the storm system, those sorts of things. So a little bit of information there for the public that's out there around these ponds. There's also a rain garden on this project that we created. We originally created thinking it was something we might need for the project to meet the requirements. Turns out we didn't actually need it, but we all thought it was a great feature to have, especially because we don't see these quite often in Walton County as we do in major cities. So we went ahead and left it in the project, and we've got a nice footbridge, pedestrian bridge that walks over. I will back up to the site plan there to show you. I'll point to where that's at. So basically anyone that's walking around the big loop around the complex can walk through the community rain garden. And it's very densely planted. Our landscape architect has done a really good job on his latest plans of planting that real nicely. Your question on the floodplain. So this particular project was reviewed by Haley Bowler. She's relatively new on reviewing some of the floodplain things, so she had a whole lot of questions during this process. We did a base flood determination to kind of see what was causing this floodplain and what the flood elevation was. So we went and pulled the 2017 Water Management District LIDAR data. We used some really complex and expensive software to analyze exactly where the elevations were, how the water flows when it floods. What we found, I wish this pointer worked a little bit better, was that this entire area in the center that creates this flood zone and a wetland area as well. It's because there's an old four-wheeler trail that went through the state forest, and you can see the bright blue area there that's dug down. A lot of tires have dug down in the dirt and pushed material to the side, and that's dammed up a little bit of water, about a foot deep. So that's really over decades is kind of what we found is the main cause of this flood zone area. So in this analysis, that allowed us to see how much water do we need to be able to store in here for that 100-year flood, and anything we actually build and fill in that zone, we want to make sure it's put back before we ever consider all the extra things we're going to do with stormwater management on the site. So the clarity that Haley asked for was a little bit above and beyond what we're used to. That's why it took so much longer to get to the point we were. All of the stuff to show we met requirements was in the original drawings, but she asked us to put it in a bigger summary document to explain it in a little bit more detail. So that's what we did. And so we submitted that detailed summary, and that's when she said, okay, that's enough. So that's why, to answer your question, that's why that took a little bit longer. We had all the information in the packet. It was all known and approved. We met 2 or 3 times on that subject, discussed it in detail, and then we just wanted a summary document in the end to explain it in a little bit more detail to the public. These pictures you see before you here it's just a little taste of what's in that document. These documents are anywhere from 15 to 30 pages in length, very technical data if you'd like to dig into them and learn more about floodplain development. Basically, we looked at 2 different scenarios. Best case scenario was some survey we had done on the ground. Survey you do on the ground in wetlands is not very accurate. I don't know if anybody, you guys have ever seen that, but they take shots in low points, 50 foot on grid, so they don't get very highly accurate data. We looked at that on the side, and because that's lower, that's kind of the worst case scenario of flood storage we need. We also took the LiDAR data from Water Management District and looked at it that way and said, okay, well, we need to take the most precaution, worst case scenario possible, make sure we meet the requirements. So that's what's all detailed in that document. Last slide here on stormwater management, just because these questions come up quite a bit. As I said, during those discussions with Haley and the rest of the planning team, some of the engineers and things, we talked about, can we do more? Can we add more in these? Do we have the capacity? And we did. We had to go through some revisions for Water Management District. During those revisions, because we had to redo a lot of the math anyway, we said, oh, let's raise all the outlet structures as high as possible to store as much water as possible and to get the best quality of water as possible, while still retaining those flood storms in the banks of those ponds. So that's what we did. And these numbers, the short summary is just to show you that, for example, water quality volume required in one of these ponds is 8,500 cubic feet. We gave it 17,000 cubic feet. Before, I probably had 9,000, and we just bumped it up just because. Same in the other ponds on the project. The final little picture over there is where the water goes. When it leaves this site, it goes 2 directions through the state forest, converges in the Primrose Apartments that you guys may remember from years past, goes through Mac Bayou, and then out to the bay. So that's it for stormwater transportation considerations. This question that came up. This project, as part of the developers agreement, as I've said, we wanted to provide a lot of public transportation improvements. So we have the first one we have there on the left is actually a bus stop. This bus stop can be used certainly for school children in the morning, but in addition to that, any transportation programs, transit programs that come along with Walton County, this is a public improvement that the developer will pay for and build here, and then Walton County can use it to the greatest extent possible. It'll be a public improvement. You see on the left side there is the 8-foot multi-use path. We've also got, there's the bus shelter, just an example bus shelter there. The picture you see on the top right is actually 395 multi-use path. I wanted to show that as an example. Our path will be almost identical, except we will have, I believe, 4 foot of separation between the road and the path, and I think 395 has more like 8 feet of separation. So that's the difference. That's really limitations on spacing for utility poles and things is why that's there. Last picture on the bottom there shows the extent of that path. It stretches all the way from the site about half a mile to the intersection at 98 and Goldsby. You can see in that little picture, if you look closely, there are some turn lanes shown. That was our turn lanes. I'm going to talk about that next. The actual turn lanes are slightly different than that in the final design. One other thing is we do have a public sewer extension as part of this project as well. So the Goldsby turn lanes project, while we were doing the final design, we started designing these turn lanes. We sent to Public Works for a preliminary look and approval. And when we did, we learned from Public Works that they had actually already sent this out for design to Half, who's the engineer they're working with. And you can see on the right side there, that's the actual final plans that Half has done. What you can see up there on the top is a snapshot from the agenda from the BCC meeting last month. This improvement project was actually put on the agenda last month for them to approve to send that out to bid. So that project is out for bid for construction right now and will almost certainly be done before this apartment project is done, barring any kind of crazy unforeseens. The reason they want to go ahead and get that done quickly is because of the 98 project, widening project going on. All that kind of needs to be married together. So that's why they took it upon themselves to go ahead and have that designed and make sure we get that built at the same time as the 98 widening is going on. We are tying in the multi-use path. One of the reasons we didn't have a full plan for the multi-use path in this package, we didn't have this design until very recently. So now that we have that, we can finalize those plans. Those plans will be with Public Works and will go through state approvals that are needed through the Public Works program. That won't come to these boards later on for the construction once it gets past the development site down to 98. Now, because it is a condition of this project, yes, that project has to be done as part of this project. That's kind of what we're proposing to do. And that's it for my technical items. I can probably answer any technical questions, I guess. I'm not sure exactly how the process you would want to go, but Adam's also got some things to present on the actual housing side of things.
We'll go ahead and get your questions. Dan, if you got a question for him before we bring the other up.
I don't know which one of these to address my question to, so can y'all just kind of tag team as I ask questions?
Well, is it not specific to what he just talked about?
Some of it is.
We'll ask him the questions that he went over, and when the other guy does it, you can ask him his questions.
Okay.
Or wait till we get done and you can ask both of them.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do that.
I just wanted to come up and say hello. My first time in front of y'all. I'm Adam Brock with Brock Built Homes and representing Goldsby, Florida LLC. It's also one of our entities. We do various things, land development, public utilities, home building apartments. Been doing it about 35 years now, 36 years. We're a family-owned company. You heard Curtis mention my brother Jeff. You'll see a lot more of us. We have quite a number of projects in Walton County and excited to be here. This one specifically, I know there's been a lot of questions around timing. And just so you know, we're looking at something on the order of from the time all permits are issued and we're ready to break ground, it's about a 2-year build-out cycle before it's finished. So I'd agree with Curtis that the traffic improvements will be done definitely before we start moving residents into the project. This is just a map to show where the location is. Oh, there we go. This is an example of the product. As Curtis mentioned, it's a prototype product of ours, so it is just a standardized footprint and building product that we're able to take around the country. This is the location of the parcel. One thing to point out, my parcel's in red. I'm not a speculator. I actually own this property, and we are surrounded entirely by TIF property. This is a colorized version of the site plan. I find they're kind of helpful to include just so you can see some of the green spaces. A lot of the trees we're planting, we're exceeding the land development code in terms of tree replacement and tree plantings. That's a big theme with us as a company. We believe in streetscapes, and landscaping can really help both drive value and just overall appearance. It's another image of the bus stop. One thing to point out, with the bus stop, we wanted to incorporate it. It kind of is located, the best location for it was also the best location for our entrance monument signage. So we put a little bit of thought into how we can blend those and make it not stand out like just a bus stop on the side of the road, but actually feel like a part of the project. So we think we've done that, incorporating it into the landscape, and also putting in things like bike racks, other uses. There's clubhouse and pool. We will be doing kind of a dog park area and outdoor grill stations, making use of any of the common space we can. We like it to be functional. And then there's just some more imagery of the buildings. That's an image of the clubhouse. And these, the top two are actually projects that are built and existing, so you can see what they look like finished. And that's it. I'll reserve the rest. Oh, one other thing I want to point out. It was mentioned that there's 32 workforce housing units. There's actually 33 total workforce housing units of the 162. And that is divided up between, we have 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom products. So there's an allocation of each unit type into workforce housing. So they're not all just the smallest unit on the ground floor type of thing. We have 15 1-bedrooms, 12 2-bedrooms, and 6 3-bedroom units.
Thank you. I got any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have a question about workforce housing, and I think what I heard was that you're using a standard that was in place in 2019. Is that correct?
That's the standard the developers agreement was drafted to. That
Right.
was in place when it was done. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so my question is, how does that compare to today's definition for workforce housing?
Well, interestingly, there's not really a definition for workforce housing in today's codes in Florida. There are for affordable housing, and if you look at HUD guidelines, they give a percentage of area median income. One thing to note is that that's part of the reason we're doing the First Amendment to the developers agreement is to actually spell out what that means. And what that means is 140% of area median income or less. It would have to be affordable to somebody earning those rates. And that definition slides based on, is it 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom in terms of the allocation that can go towards it. The area median income gets adjusted annually. So the way this project will work is those rents will also slide as area median income changes. If the area median income goes down, the rents will have to come down with it. If it goes significantly up, the rents would go up at lease renewal times.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, how does the 2019 standard compare with the land development code requirements for workforce, which I believe is the same thing as moderate income? How does that compare?
I'm not sure. The only way I can answer that is knowing how HUD defines workforce or.
I think that's a question for staff anyway.
For staff, okay, perfect.
Just to address that, the developers agreement calls out 140% of AMI, which is accurate for that time, the statute at that time. Currently, what we'd be looking at here, the closest would be the moderate income level, which would be 120%. So they're about 20% greater than what the moderate would allow presently.
All right, thank you.
Dan, you got any questions?
Couple.
All right, now's your time.
Could you tell me how that 4.3 acres of wetlands is being utilized?
See if I can get there on the color site plan here. So the central wetland area in the middle, that's all being left undisturbed with the exception of the fringe areas of the stormwater pond on the southeast. and of course, the road crossing that goes through the middle. The road crossing is actually, I want to say it's about 4-foot tall vertical retaining walls that's offset exactly enough that we need to get the sidewalks in place. So we didn't want to take too much there. We tried to limit it as much as possible to get down to, half an acre is always kind of our threshold. We don't want to disturb any more than that. We started out with about 0.27 on this, but then as we got really deep into the flood compensation, we needed more volume and more volume. So to get volume, you have to dig out. So we had to actually increase the wetland impact slightly to get that flood compensation volume. I think we stuck at around 0.32 acre of impact, something like that. And the remainder, large area in the middle, is all just undisturbed, as well as some buffer zones around the sides of them as well.
Because you are authorized roadways, parking, accessible ways, utilities, and other needed infrastructures. So that's something that you could do if you wanted to. Did you take advantage of any of that?
We try to minimize wetland disturbance to the greatest extent possible. We didn't want any buildings inside of it, so we certainly left those out. We used only the roadways and the stormwater ponds.
Is this considered a family-friendly development?
Probably a question for
Yes, sir. I mean, that's part of the reason that we have a 3-bedroom product. The prototype product Curtis mentioned, these buildings, the same footprint that you're seeing here in brown can house either different ratios of 1, 2, or 3-bedroom options. We went specifically with the 3-bedroom option, having some availability of that for the use of families.
So as far as playgrounds go, basically it's the swimming pool is the focal point for the for this development.
On this colorized site plan, yes, the swimming pool, I'd agree, is the focal point. There's also kind of a fitness room inside of the clubhouse. And then as you look at number 7 on the left side of the screen, right by the western pond, that's another kind of park area and dog walking park area, play area. And then in between the buildings themselves, where they're labeled 1 and 1 on the left side between each block, those kind of courtyard spaces are also done to encourage people to have some outdoor space.
Thank you for having the patience to explain all this, because I've actually been trying to educate myself on responsible developments and bringing quality to a community so that there's not so much negativity toward coming in and building these products. So some of the questions were playgrounds, bicycle paths. Are there bicycle paths in this community, or?
The sidewalks can function as that. Most people choose to end up riding on the streets, but we do want, pedestrians always at the forefront of our mind and connectivity. So we talk a lot about if somebody's leaving one building, going to visit a neighbor in another, how do they get there? How do they cross? Limiting those crossing points with traffic interaction. I have 4 kids myself, so it's something we think about. And as you see other projects that we're going to bring in front of you, I think you'll see that consistently in all of ours, that I tell people I focus pedestrian first, then automobile, because I look at it like you're going to pull in my development, you're going to park your car, and the idea is you should be done at that point, and I want it to be more livable, walkable spaces.
Green space connectivity, that's not a part of this because of the surroundings?
Actually, we do try to interlink them. So, aside from a couple of crossing points, just to make the parking lot connectivity, for example, if you were at the clubhouse and pool, you have a connective sidewalk that would take you all the way over to the southwestern buildings with only one crossing of a parking lot. And it's that little small southern parking lot kind of nearest the wetlands. And then as well as on the north side, you can walk over across through the rain garden. There'd be 2 crossing points there across the parking lot. But connectivity-wise, we tried to do as much as we could with the space we had on this site.
Are the sidewalks the standard 4 feet? Or are they any of them multimodal, which accommodates both pedestrians and bicyclists?
They're 5-foot sidewalks.
Okay.
They're 5 foot,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Are there places around these housing units where there's bicycle racks to secure the kids?
There'd be bicycle racks around the clubhouse and I don't think I have them actually located on this colorized plan.
I guess just a yes or no, in each
Yes,
one of
there-
these major housing units, is there a place for the kids to secure their bikes?
Oh,
bike
yes, sir.
racks?
Yes, sir. There will
Okay,
be bike
that-
racks
That's
now.
good enough, that's good enough. The clubhouse, that has overflow parking?
It does, it has parking at the front, and it'll be dual purpose. Eventually, it'll be solely for residents or guests. Initially, the leasing office will be there, so it'll be for the leasing agent and customers.
Okay, what's your parking space ratio?
1.8, so it's 292 spaces for 162 units, is that right? I want to say it's 1.8, that's what I had in this presentation, so I may be a space or two off, but it was 1.8 spaces per unit.
Okay, so parking's really been a problem that we've had to really look at for a long time here. It's a real sensitive area because it's something we've overlooked and overlooked and overlooked.
Sure. On parking, I'd like to point out that the kind of gold standard for multifamily is 1.5 spaces. The way that's derived is most multifamily buildings built are going to have, currently today in this construction cost environment, are going to be typically 70% one bedroom, 30% two bedroom. 50-50 ratio is what you used to have, 1 and 2s.
Okay.
So 1.5 spaces per unit ends up being 1 space per bedroom. So we're actually exceeding what, and I'm looking at it less from a land development standpoint and more from banks don't want to finance projects that they view as being underparked. So we typically target being in that 1.7 to 1.8 range.
So there's the gold standard, industry standard.
Yes, sir.
And then there's what really happens, the real world. So let's talk real world for a minute. Most working class Americans that this is targeted to, both members of the household work. And chances are slim to none that they're going to be working at the same place. So both people in that household are going to need a parking space for their car. And then in an ideal situation, like a lot of apartment complexes that I've visited up north, they've got 3 parking places per unit for both of the breadwinners and anybody that wants to visit. And what they found out by doing that is when they stencil the apartment number on those 3 parking places, it cuts down on a lot of problems. People come home after work, they're tired, they're exhausted, their parking place is taken, they have a problem with their neighbor. Well, why did you park in my parking place? Well, it doesn't have your number on it and somebody had mine, so I took yours. So that just kind of starts snowballing problems. And when you start having neighbors at each other's throat over a parking place, then the police get involved and then you have problems in your neighborhood when it could just easily be resolved by having adequate parking. Now, I know you've got your gold standard and you're meeting all the things you're supposed to do, but in the real world, the parking is a problem. And so is there any way, and I'm trying to wrap my head around approving a lot of projects that I've been against in the past. And the way I'm trying to learn is I read these articles on responsible development, and parking is a big deal. Is there any way that you could improve on the parking, or is that ship sailed?
I would have to refer to Curtis. We have spent a lot of time talking about parking, but I'll let you speak to it.
Yeah, so site design, as you would probably guess, it's a very delicate balance at times on the environmental side of things, stormwater.
Actually, there's an answer to this, and it's a compromise. The compromise and the answer is to reduce your density.
So we've already done that. Yeah, we've actually already done that. The original development was set for 167. We took it down to 162, and we utilized as much of the space as we could for parking, while trying to preserve as much of those wetlands as possible.
Well, and I think the county attorney told us last time it's not our job to work on compromises, Dan.
So
We're not here for that.
okay, so what's the ratio where you say you've got a bottom figure and a top figure on what the density allowance is? And this is probably a staff question. Could you tell us what the density parameters are for this project?
So if this was a typical project that didn't already have a developer's agreement that was executed, it's general commercial, excuse me, they could have 17 units an acre.
Okay, so it's not a bracket?
Not in this instance. Now, it is set by the developer's agreement, and their limitation is 166 units.
So there is no room for additional parking?
I mean, they're exceeding the code minimums, and it sounds like they're exceeding the gold standard that I'm unaware of, but
Has that been
I'm
working
not an
for us?
engineer.
I know.
You know, it's,
That's what I'm trying to help with.
sure,
I
I
get it.
understand.
I get
Yeah,
it.
I'm just trying to answer your question. I couldn't
Thank
answer
you.
anything
I
else.
appreciate it. Thank you. You did your job.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Yes, sir. Go ahead, Ron.
Can I just ask you a few questions around the workforce? So, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. I just have a couple of quick questions. On the workforce housing, you mentioned there's 33 units. I believe you said 15 were one bedroom, 12 were two bedroom, and 3, and 6 3 bedrooms. Are they intermixed throughout the units, or do they tend to concentrate in one of the areas?
No, thank you for that question, actually. I'm going to give you a little longer answer. We actually do a lot of both affordable and workforce housing. I probably have done more of it in Atlanta from a for sale basis than anybody else in the city. One of our fundamental beliefs is you do not concentrate workforce housing because the whole purpose of it is to make it inclusive, and you don't want to subjugate out neighbors and make anybody feel like it's known that they got some type of subsidy to live where they do. So we take absolutely monumental pride in that nobody's going to know which units are what, and they are going to be mixed out throughout the development. Yes, sir.
Thank you for that. And what is the process of, if the units presumably are going to be, are they a similar kind of quality as the other?
Exactly the same.
What is the process for someone to kind of go through? Because I guess there'll be a lower rate, so everyone always wants to pay a lower rate. I'm just a little bit unclear on how you go through.
How that works?
Yes.
When you come into the leasing office, the leasing agents are trained in how to qualify somebody for the product. So there is some advertising that there would be available units, and when people come in, they work with our leasing agent to go through a qualification process, because you have to show that you make less than the maximum income requirements.
I think the county is going to do something, put together something to qualify people too, and make sure that make sure apartment complexes are following those rules. So I think there's something else that's going to be added to.
And that's something that we're supportive of. We actually have both governmental and nonprofit groups and quasi-governmental bodies that do that service in Atlanta. It's worked well. And then there's usually an annualized reporting that goes back to the counties and municipalities. We're continually meeting it. And I believe in this developer's agreement, I want to say this is a 20-year commitment on that workforce housing. Yes, sir.
So, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Are you allowed to say, you mentioned what the standard is to be 120% of the median, and you're going to be 140% of the median? Are you able to say what kind of the rates are on some of these units? Because I think generally people have, in their mind what's affordable, and is that a fair question?
Yes, absolutely. And just so you know, these numbers are based off 2021 HUD limits and area median income for this area as of 2021. I am not sure if 2022 data has been made available yet. So, and like I said, it is a sliding scale as income levels change. But currently today, one bedroom would be $1,828 maximum. A two bedroom would be $2,194, and a three bedroom would be $2,534.
Could you hold your comments down? We're going to give you all a chance to speak in a minute, okay?
Thank you very much for that.
Yes, sir.
And I'm really glad to see that you have the side path. I think that's a really important thing. May I ask how you decided on the bus stop for the public work? I think it's really great that you're doing public work. did you decide on the bus stop, if you don't may ask?
Well, I think it was actually part of the original developer's agreement. And when we saw it, there's a couple ways you can build a bus stop. You can put a bench out with no cover and say, hey, we did a bus stop. I kind of believe if I'm going to spend the money, I want to be able to, this stuff has my family name on it. So I want it to look good and take the time to think about it. And like I said, I have 4 kids. They would be using it. So, it was something we just directed our designer to incorporate into the plan and make sure that it was a high standard.
And I guess the last question I was going to ask was in terms of some of the scope or the size of the projects that you had done in the past. I saw that it looked like you, Orlando and St. Augustine, but you also said you.
Yeah, in our history, we've done a couple $1 billion in real estate development. Thousands of homes and units around the Southeast have had divisions in South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Florida.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Anybody else got any questions for the applicant?
A bunch. I'm not anywhere close to finish.
All right.
So do you have any security cameras around the complex?
Good question. That one I don't know the answer to. Okay. That gentleman back there is our president of home building CFO for our overall companies, Mike Schwinninger. I don't have an answer to that one.
I'm going to just guess a no.
I don't know right now.
And I'm just going by this responsible development list I've recently learned, so thank you again for your patience.
And I'll send a text to my brother right now and ask him if he has that answer.
The setbacks, judging from this diagram you've got here, it looks really tight between the buildings and the property line. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit on what that is? This was probably answered in the buried information. There's a mountain of information, and I didn't get to see this.
The setbacks on this one, I believe 10 foot was the minimum setback. Of course, this is all state forest around us. And then what we did after that was we took the prototype floor plate units, we set them on the setback, and then we laid out the minimum required parking and sidewalk widths inside, and then we compressed it as much as we can to provide as much setback as we could, given the space requirements. So I believe we're probably around 11 to 12 feet, something like that. So we're a little bit greater than the minimum.
Okay. I believe you've already addressed the privacy and beautification landscaping. Have you consulted with the school district to see how many children are going to be added to our?
That's part of the report that we get from the county.
Do we have that here?
Yeah, you got it in your package.
Okay. I did not see it. Can you give me that number?
Sure, I can pull it up, but you should have already seen it.
And we've got 166 units, is that it?
That's what was approved in the developers agreement in, I think, 2018.
The actual
or 19.
number is?
Mine's 162.
162 in a family-friendly community that's going to have a lot of children. So that's the number I'm looking for. 15 students for 160.
I don't come up
And
with
it's the
those numbers,
same, it's the same process they use on
Okay.
every one of these that's come through.
Is there anybody here
You've asked
from
this
the?
question every time.
Is there anybody here from the school board?
No, but they've already looked at it, and they've gone through this, and they're the ones that come up with these numbers. So it's the same process.
Do you buy these numbers?
It doesn't matter whether I buy them or not. I'm not an expert. I'm not the person that puts them together. The school board does, and they use their expert.
Okay.
So I may not agree with them, but that's what it is.
Okay, well, I'm not buying it, and.
Yep, you don't have to.
So, let's see. The bus shelter, I'm guessing since this is a family-friendly neighborhood, you put that as a bus stop primarily with the children in mind for the school bus?
No, we actually originally did it because it was part of the developer's agreement. Before we purchased the property, we read through those conditions. It was a requirement we had to do. Our main focus around it was making it look good and be located that it was easy to use.
Was there any communication with the school district to see if that would be a good idea for a school bus stop?
I don't directly work with a school district on a project like this, so I've had no communication directly with the school board. I think that's something the Walton County staff does. Maybe, Curtis, do you have?
Can you bring the intersection on 98 back up on the screen, please? Okay, I'm just going to tell you what this looks like, and if it's not the case, please let me know. Okay, you just went by it. There. Okay, now if you're heading down 98 and you are turning into this complex, it appears as though you're going to be traveling along at close to speed limit speeds and then jamming on your brakes and turning right because there's no feed-in lane. You know where you can actually, the driver can pull over into like a runway and then start braking?
Yeah, I understand what you mean on that. That's actually an FDOT decision on that. All the widening that's occurred now from Destin through Miramar Beach and everything, they've gotten rid of those right turn lane, decel lanes. They're using the third lane now as the decel and right turn lane on the entire strip from Destin all the way through Walton County now.
Okay, and then that would explain why there's not an acceleration lane.
DOT actually doesn't do acceleration lanes anymore. That's something I've dealt with on another project. That like on 331 to 98, they won't allow those any longer.
Okay. Does this development have underground utilities?
Yes.
Plus.
Yes.
So I know I don't have any input on the developer's agreement, but if I understood you correctly, that this intersection we're looking at right now, did I hear you say that that would be completed before you start putting people in the complex?
So we don't have control over that because it's a BCC project. What I can tell you is the BCC had that on the last meeting. I don't know if you guys were in attendance at that meeting, but I would assume it got approved to be advertised for bid.
And was added to the design and the construction project for this intersection. The board is going to contribute money to FDOT. FDOT is going to construct it as part of the construction of, or the reconstruction of US 98 at that intersection. It will be performed by the same contractor doing the work for FDOT. That was the board's direction on Tuesday.
Is there any assurance that this will be done before people start occupying? Just yes or no?
We expect that it will, yes.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
To answer your question very directly.
Is that in the developer's agreement? It's not, is it?
I don't think it is.
Okay. Now, something you said, and I missed this. How much for a one-bedroom?
Pull that back out. It's 1,828.
Okay, so the word affordable housing has a reputation of being false advertising because a fireman can't make that, a paramedic can't make that, a police officer can't make that. The people who make our community safe can't afford to live there. So I need somebody to tell me in a very dumbed-down version why you call this affordable housing when the people that it's supposed to house can't afford to live there.
Well, it's not affordable housing. This is workforce housing. They're different. They are different definitions. HUD would define affordable housing as anything below 80% of area median income. Typically for firefighters, policemen, and teachers, you're looking to be closer to 60% of area median income. I agree with you, it's deceiving, but that's a nationwide problem starting and originating with HUD and the federal government and how they make those definitions. The second issue you have in Walton County is you have extremely high area median income, and recently it's only gone up. Now, that said, we have run studies to see who is living in your existing apartment stock where there is no affordable limits or workforce limits of any kind, and they are full market rate. And I will tell you, it is shocking. You have bartenders that are making over 6 figures a year. We were actually very surprised when we ran our demographic studies at the various income levels for people that are renting the units in South Walton County.
So I think you said the stormwater issue was based on 2017 standards.
No, sorry, the stormwater requirements are all current standards. We did the base flood analysis based on a LiDAR scan from 2017. Nothing has changed in this area since 2017, in this study region.
Question answered. So educate me on why you would pay $111,000 as a fair share proportionate when you're going to pay it looks like you're paying for everything here anyway.
Sure.
Is that true?
So the way that the developer's agreement is written, we still have to do the study and determine, based on the land development code, how much is due, which is $111,000. Any amount of construction that is made to the public improvements, that's including the transit stop, the multi-use path, and the turn lanes, any amount that this project pays for, that can be deducted from that $111,000. Based on escalations lately, I would say they're going to end up paying more than $111,000 for these improvements. So at the end of the day, they won't be paying $111,000 in. They'll be paying a contractor to build much more than that around for the public improvements.
Okay. My next question is for Mr. Carpenter, so thank you. You don't have to get up, Matt. Just this 1.8 parking places per unit, is that one of these projects you're working on to raise the bar, or is this bar as high as it's going to get?
This bar has been approved by the Board of County Commissioners. We're not proposing to increase that at this time. The parking issues we're working on are public parking issues right now.
Okay, so when was this approved? Recently? The 1.8?
I think that's the average that they're proposing over the total number of units. The last time our land development code was updated, I believe, was in 2019.
So that 2019 is the 1.8?
It meets the requirements of the parking standards that are in the code. And the aggregate of that, I believe, equals to 1.8 over the total number of units that they're building and the unit mix within that total.
Okay. All right.
I can clarify specifically what those are on the bedrooms if you like. The one bedrooms require 1.5. The 2 and 3 bedrooms require 2 spaces. So that's how the minimum number is populated. The minimum number in this particular development, because we're split on east and west on this project, we don't want to meet the western area parking standards by using space on the east. People don't need to walk all the way across to get to the unit. We actually looked at them in isolated silos, saying, let's make sure we have the minimum parking in the areas. So the eastern area, based on the 1.5 per 1 bedrooms, 2 spaces for 2 and 3s, and 1 per 250 square foot of the leasing office, it required 59 spaces, and we provided 65 spaces. The western area required 234 spaces. We provided 237 spaces.
So you're playing by the rules. I get it. The problem is our rules are broken because real world tells this isn't working. And it's not your fault. It's not your fault. We need to do better, and we need to raise the bar. And the BCC just got finished using a very important word that I cannot embrace enough, and that is to be proactive. If you see a problem and you know there's a problem, get out ahead of the curve and try and do something about it and make it better. And I don't see that, so excuse my frustration.
So I will also say it's not part of this project, but we did a project in Freeport years ago. I believe Clay actually remembers the project. We did a parking study on It's the apartments on 331, their sanctuary. We actually did a parking study on the sanctuary about 2 or 3 years ago. And I do recall that the results of that study, I looked it up while I was sitting there, was 1.5 spaces. We went out 3 times and counted. We went out in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. We went out in the middle of the day, and that's what the demand was.
I get it.
Complex.
I understand you did a study, and I understand what the figures reflect, but it is not reality that we deal with here every day. So,
Any other questions?
please,
Yeah. What?
I think I'm done.
Good.
Mr. Chairman, I got,
Let me ask just one last
Sure,
quick
Rob,
one.
go ahead.
I've seen a variety of kind of EV, stations, and that seems to be popular. Does that typically come with a lot of apartments now, those kind of charging stations, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Actually, it's not that I'm aware of in Walton County. There are some municipalities I work in that have started requiring them, not only in apartments, but single-family detached homes even. So I think it is a trend that is moving in that direction, and probably should be something municipalities are looking at pretty heavily, because frankly, I don't think EV vehicles will be the main mode of transportation until you can charge just about everywhere you go. So.
I just had one quick question. What's the right-of-way width on Goldsby Road? And is there an opportunity for future expansion of that road? Or-
Yes, so Goldsby is the standard 66-foot right-of-way. And we do apply the right-of-way protection zones as we normally would with those collector, and I believe Goldsby is considered a collector roadway. It may not be formally in the standard because that standard was adopted years ago, but Goldsby, for all intents and purposes, is a collector, so we would apply that. The only thing that really means anything is the setbacks, and we're quite a ways off with building setbacks from Goldsby.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so Goldsby could be widened in the future, possibly?
Yes, sir. The 66 is probably more than enough to widen Goldsby, but even beyond that,
Okay.
there's plenty of room.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, we'll open it up to public comments. Anyone would like to speak on this? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. I just got the answer to the security cameras question. My partner Matt stepped out, called my brother. He said, we had not planned to do security cameras, but it is absolutely something he'll look at. And he said it's a very easy addition to the scope. So just wanted to let you know I got that response.
Something I've learned by being on this board, if it's not in writing in the developer's agreement, it's not going to happen. So, but thank you for the
I
sentiment.
might prove you wrong. We'll see.
Okay, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, I'm Lori Eccles, 368 Shore Drive. Y'all know what I'm going to say. There's not enough parking. There's never enough parking. Y'all, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Had to get my lights on. Got new glasses. I can barely see today. Should have never changed them. Our roadways are not conducive to more apartments in Miramar Beach, period. And do any of y'all live in Miramar Beach?
I try and avoid it.
Do any of you have to drive through Miramar Beach to get to work either way? Anybody up here? And where do you live? Well, I mean, I don't need your address.
work.
I'm just saying, you can have an office, but do you go to it? I'm just asking how many of you know what's going on. I will tell you, I left my home on Shore Drive today at 3:05, and I got here at probably about 4:08 when I walked in that door. And it is in May. We just can't handle anymore. I am going to read a letter that was submitted this morning. I got to put these back on because that was submitted this morning, actually, from a lady who is here today. She just doesn't feel like talking in front of anybody, and I just love it. So, I think Mac got this letter as well as the rest of the Board of County Commissioners. Dear Commissioners, Zoning and Planning Department, and all other parties concerned, in regards to the above referenced matter, as a resident of Botany Bayou located on Goldsby Road, I'm pleading with you to hear our concerns. Attached, please see a video, if y'all want to play this, that my husband took 2 days ago, May the 10th, at 7:18 a.m. In said video, you can see how far the traffic is backed up on Goldsby Road. This is a daily occurrence. Not 2 minutes after he took this video, while still backed up on Goldsby, a vehicle pulling out onto 98, trying to make it to the median, was T-boned, causing a major traffic accident. This can be verified with the Sheriff's Department. It happens repeatedly. This can be verified by the Sheriff's Department. It has become incredibly dangerous trying to get onto Highway 98, and we know this is only going to get worse. As you all are aware, D.R. Horton is currently throwing up tons of single-family homes behind our neighborhood. They're still building the massive apartment complex over on Mac Bayou and East Mac Bayou. Mac Bayou already backs up past the hospital, therefore even more people are flooding over to Goldsby to try and get around that traffic. We cannot handle a 163-unit apartment complex on Goldsby. We can barely get out of our neighborhood as it is. I was recently told by a local service worker that they have 6 adults living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Terramar. I was shocked to say the least. The same thing will happen at this apartment complex and the one on Mac Bayou. One person takes out a lease and then piles in the others, and they pile in the others. No one polices this, as it would be impossible to do so. This couple behind me, they have a daughter that attends Seacoast Collegiate High School. Their schools are so overloaded with students that the school counselors sat up at midnight with the parents and the children who had to be at school the next morning to try and get them enrolled in classes for next year when enrollment opened at midnight because we don't have enough teachers and classes for all the kids. To help assure our kids were able to get into classes, this is what we all had to do just 2 months ago. The original plan for this development stated it would not affect our schools as it was to be warehouses. This will absolutely affect our schools now. On another note, this entire woke movement that seems to imply that everyone is entitled to live at the beach and we should throw up apartments and affordable housing is nonsense. Living at the beach is a luxury that many of us have worked so hard to achieve. Going to the beach for a vacation is a luxury. Seeing our county make these, I'm going to use a few different words, seeing our county continue approving these is plain and sickening. Apartments are also proven in multiple studies to lower property values. This is quite unfair to the residents in our community, as we all have custom homes, a strict architectural review board that we have to pass to even be in the neighborhood. We've worked so hard to have this, and to see it taken away with more stick-framed apartments is devastating. Please hear us and fight for us, the residents and your friends that elected you. Well, they didn't elect you. The elected ones elected y'all. And we do thank y'all. We know that y'all don't have to come in here and do this, but y'all are what we have, and that y'all are who we get to talk to. But please be our voice. And thank you for your time. And this is from Sherry Harvey and her husband. They can wave back there at you. And this is just one letter. I have friends in Louisville, Kentucky that own in there, and I contacted them yesterday, and I'm sure that they have also called the BCC, and I'm sure Mac will be getting something from them as well. We have to do something. And unfortunately, y'all, it does start with y'all. It might finish with the BCC, but if y'all don't keep on permitting this stuff to happen, it would never have to go to the BCC.
That's not true. It goes to the BCC anyway.
Well, maybe so, but you know what? They wouldn't have 2 or 3 approvals before it gets there. I'm just asking y'all to please, the way, the new road that's going out, they promised that new road to folks before this apartment complex was ever even coming up before the meetings. They've been talking about this road for a long time, but they don't need to build anything else apartment-wise until they get their traffic situation taken care of, and let these hardworking people that already pay taxes get to their jobs so they can work. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, we're going to impose a 3-minute limit on the conversations after this, so it's going to take a while to get through this. Yes, sir.
My name is Kevin Flockton, and I live at 334 Botany Boulevard. I am the HOA president of Botany Boulevard, okay? And what my big concern is the drainage, the water issues. I have learned more in the last 5 years since becoming president about drainage in that area than anybody else. What they've done their plans with the stormwater, and I think you have three ponds there. Those ponds will collect the water, and when they get full, the water is going to drain out of them. Where is it going to go? All right? It's going to go back into the state forest. And my biggest concern is it's going to come on to Goldsby Road, because Goldsby floods already sometimes when we have 3 or 4 inches of rain. Nobody's brought that up here tonight. We've looked at the ponds or whatever, and they said it's going to go through Primrose and down through Mac Bayou, right? But I can tell you what's going to end up happening. It's going to just come right back onto that road in that area, because that's what's happening where we live right now. Our drainage system works where we have retention ponds, but we're lucky enough that our outflows go into Hewitt Bayou. What happens is the state forest fills up with water, and that water comes at us too. It comes through the state forest, through the neighbors' yards that back up to the state forest, into our drainage system. We have to get rid of that too. So I would really ask you all to really look at the actual drainage issue there on Goldsby Road. Because if that gets flooded, then no one's getting out unless to go through Mac Bayou. Also, the last thing I'd like to say is, something you said isn't true about the traffic light. I have worked with Tony Anderson now for 2 years to get a traffic light there, and I've written letters. Tony is lobbying the state, because the state, as you all know, controls putting a traffic light on Goldsby Road. And we continue to lobby that.
Oh, that's what he said. It's
He
state control.
said that. Yeah, it is state control, but the point is I was led to believe, or I thought I heard, that BBC wasn't for putting a light there because they don't want to put any more lights on 98.
Well, that
That's
may-
what he said.
He may have said that. I was just saying it's DOT does
Yeah,
control if a
I
light
know
goes
that.
there.
I know. I'm aware of that. So again, I'm very concerned about the water issues in that area.
We'll let the applicant answer that, because they go through a lot of engineering to make sure the water doesn't affect another neighborhood, and they can answer that.
I'm sure they can. I'm a retired engineer, and studies are nice, but I'm talking reality and what goes on in that area, right? So I'm just saying, and there's a flood, and you can see where the floodplain is right through the property and through over the road, crossing the road over onto the other side.
Well, I know they mentioned earlier that they had a lot more capacity in their ponds than they were required to, so I would imagine that they have probably a 100-year flood plan in there.
I don't know, last year we had over 100 inches in that area because I have a rain gauge on my dock.
Well, listen,
So I'm just
I know I live
saying
down
that.
here too, so I understand.
Yeah.
There are going to be times where I don't care what you got in there, it's going to get flooded, so, anyway. But we'll let them answer that question for you in a minute. Yes, sir.
My name's Bruce Bailey, live 430 Botany. I just calculated the number of cars, but, and Mr. Tricker, I appreciate, are you Tricker? Or,
Close enough.
okay. Thank you for the questions you asked.
Cosin, Danny Cosin.
Mr. Cozen, okay, you had the wrong sign. Thank you for your questions, but I believe with what we're doing at the end of Goldsby with D.R. Horton, the apartments that are being built on the other side that are coming over on Goldsby, the new apartments proposed, I think you're looking at about 1,000 additional cars over what we have already. And I promise you, I go out every morning, take my daughter to the bus. She's 16. I won't even let her drive. I'll tell you like this. I've driven in Beijing, China on the third ring. I'd rather do that than try to get out on 98. It's horrible. Somebody is going to die. And I'm not just saying that. Every day there are near misses, accidents. You add another 1,000 cars, not only are going to be wrecks, you're going to have road rage like you've never seen. This is the most irresponsible proposition. Do we need housing for workers? Absolutely. We don't need it here. And this is not affordable. You're right. This is not affordable. This is fraught with disaster, and I know there's other committees involved and other people, but if you guys would just stand up and say, we're going to do something different. We're going to put the infrastructure in, everything that we need to do before you build the apartments. Don't let them break ground until we have more hearings on this. This is bad. the way it's
Unfortunately,
presented.
we don't have that authority here.
I understand, but you can raise your voices. You know people that know people. This is not good for Walton County. And the only ones we have to come to on this is you guys.
No, you
So-
can go to the county commissioners. They'll go hit there next, and they'll be the ones, they do have the authority to make some of those changes. We don't. All we do is we look at something, if it meets the land development code and the comp plan, then that's what we look at.
So that would be your recommendation, go to the county commissioners?
On the, yes, sir, on the
on
issues
the
that you're
safety.
talking about,
So
yes.
safety is not part of your,
No, sir.
We're really just an advisory committee. You know, our opinion, we're just kind of opinions here, and we try and exercise what's in the land development code and try and commingle that with common sense.
No,
And-
it doesn't say anything about common sense in there. It just says, does it meet the land development code and the comp plan? Because I would argue that sometimes it doesn't meet common sense, just like you pointed out, but that's not what our job
but
is.
could I ask you to delay until we talk to the county commissioners? Because we don't know the process all the time.
That
I'm
Get
telling
a
you-
chance to go to them. This will go to them after we vote on it tonight.
Okay.
It'll go to them. And at that point, you'll
At
get a
that
chance to
point,
go
we
and
get a
speak
chance.
to them also.
Okay.
But we do have an opportunity to make recommendations as part of our decision.
We can.
Yes,
Correct?
please do that.
Well, I assume we can. We can, I'd have to
Okay,
ask.
that's all I would ask. Thank you.
I don't know that we make recommendations on traffic studies and stuff, though, do we?
Not unless specifically asked by the board.
Yes, okay. Yeah, yes, sir. I'm sorry, we got one more. I'll get you next. Thanks.
Trey Morris at 1043 East Mac Bayou. Dan, I certainly appreciate all the stuff you've brought up tonight. You do. Guys, I live on the part of East Mac Bayou. It's not even paved. It's right by the county. I mean, right by the bayou. It's not even paved. And we're wanting to do a project like this. It's unbelievable. I oppose this project for many reasons. That road and intersection is going to be damn dangerous. It's going to be very dangerous. County commissioners will hear from me. They're going to hear from me. It's going to be seriously. The mess that they've already caused on Mac Bayou with Primrose is a mess. I've got pictures on my phone right here of water coming off those buildings, coming over the road into a pond. And it's not their retention pond. It is a royal mess. And that's going to cause major issues right there. And that's the reason why those people are avoiding that area coming down Goldsby. Parking spots. Wow. Dan, thank you, sir, for bringing that up. We need at least 600, guys. 600, four. And I'm sorry about this, sir, but that's not enough. 300 is not enough. I mean, 4. I mean, I know how they're gonna pack them in there. You go right before you get to the dirt road on East Back Bayou, and there's Stonegate Villas. There's cars parked up right down the road every morning, every afternoon, 4 to 16 every day, because they stack them in there like cordwood. There's no rules or regulations. And we hear this all the time about 30A, about all the dang parking, but yet we're not wanting to do anything about it. Aggravating. If you wanted to build 10 to 12, $1 to $2 million homes there, that'd be perfect. That's what this county needs. They need affordable housing between Freeport and the Funiac so they can hit 20 and go to Niceville. They can go to Panama City Beach. They don't have to get on 98 unless they're going to work down there. $100,000 bartender. Bud and Alley's must do good. Guys, this will probably pass anyway, unfortunately. I know how Walton County works. You throw enough money at it, get enough people on board, it's going to pass. Real sad.
All right. Yes, sir.
My name is Uriah Matthews, Matthews, Matthews with 2 T's. Whew, the fear mongering is going to happen, guys. I am here to make sure that you hear a voice that is in absolute agreement that we should have this development. We need more and more and more housing in our area. People are infrastructure. Infrastructure, those people determine the health of our community. And whether or not people know it in the back, an old folks home with 100 beds closed down in Destin because we don't have the people. Businesses don't have the people to run themselves. You can add as many monster houses or whatever this guy just said here as you want. But when we don't have the people to support our area, we are an unhealthy community. So I just, first off, if I'm not mistaken, this is already an approved development, so that's exciting. This next piece here is amendment is just great. So at the end of the day, I would just say that you guys are going to get pressured by people that aren't neighborly. Frankly, I found out about this because there's a flyer going around called Rally for Our Neighborhood. These are neighbors you don't want. So we need to be embracing of our area, of people moving here. We need to be excited about people moving here. And God bless the people that probably protested everybody behind me moving. Right? At one point or another, these people behind me were the people that are being talked about that they don't want here. So they need to get on board and learn to live with it. I am irritated growing up in this community that there are people here that think making $113,000 is a problem. That's the affordable number to move into this complex. I've heard people throwing around that there's different numbers about people with making different incomes. I am irritated beyond all belief that this sentiment is behind me. So I encourage you to embrace a community that is developing, a community that recognizes it needs this type of housing to support the health of our community. And with that said, I got to go to Destin and I got to take my wife to Target because we don't have much of anything to offer ourselves here in Target or Freeport. So I'm out of here, but thank you very much for your time, guys, and don't give in to the fear mongering. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Well, one of the,
Hello, Donna Johns, JOHNS. I just have a couple of questions. First of all, they were talking about the setbacks earlier, and it was like 10, 11, or 12-foot setbacks. Is that in the back of the apartments, and is that the max that it is?
I think it's the side setbacks, isn't it? Side setbacks, and that's a county code requirement.
Okay.
Can you elaborate?
10 required, 14 is what we provided on the sides.
What about the back?
All 4 sides?
Two sides, in the back and the front.
While he's checking that, or do you have the answer?
Well, why don't we let her ask her questions and then.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
Another question is, on the staff report, it says that the South Walton utility and/or regional utilities mark the non-comply box, and I was just wondering, has that been corrected?
I didn't see any non-compliant on the stuff we had, so, yeah, is compliant now.
Okay. And the third thing is, Mr. Cosin, you had asked about the schools and how many students this was going to bring. According to the staff report, it's bringing 15 students. 7 are elementary, 3 are middle, and 4 are high school. And the numbers that they use to come up with what figures are 2019 numbers, so they're not current numbers. Those numbers are extremely outdated. Their formula for these numbers is extremely outdated because it says 2019 is what they're basing it on. This is 2022, and a lot has happened since 2019. And our high school is and has been for a while now over capacity. So in reality, you're going to overload the schools even more than they're already overloaded. So just please take that into consideration.
I think we had, and I believe you were here, we had a lady from the school board come in and
Yes.
talk to us, and they always operate from a position of behind the curve. I'm not saying that's smart, I'm just telling you what they do, and we get the numbers from them. If you got a problem with the numbers on the 15 and everything, and I couldn't tell you if that's an accurate number or not, but that comes from them.
Right, but like I said, their formula is from 2019, so it's just
Formula
not
that they
correct.
provide for us, so, I mean, there's nothing we can do about it.
I understand that. I'm just trying to say, reality is that the schools are overloaded. That's all I'm saying. The bus drivers, we don't have enough bus drivers. We don't. And they're talking about the teachers, we don't. Sometimes they have to get the 2 classes in one teacher.
Well, I think part of the problem is the teachers don't have places to live too, and that's one of the issues that we're trying to resolve here.
Well, I don't think you're going to resolve it with these high prices.
Well, sometimes supply and demand comes into play, and if you get enough supply, then demand goes down, and then the prices will go down.
We've got a lot of problems all over the county. It's not just on the south end. We can't find bus drivers on the north end either. I've seen the signs up there asking for them. So, it's just common sense. Thank you.
All right, who else wants to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Adrian Smith, 140 Botany Boulevard. Whether or not this is approved, or if they say it's approved, whatever. One of the things for future that needs to be addressed is, in 2020, the median income for Walton County was $31,000, $31,042, okay? In the last 2 years, we've all seen what's happened. The workers are not there, businesses are shut down, it's not working. So, at $1,800 for a 1-bedroom unit here, that's $21,600 a year. And if the median income in 2020, which I'm sure it's probably close to the same because we've had such a drop in everything, that leaves nobody room to live, to enjoy life. It's got to be, if it's going to be affordable housing, you got to come up with something else.
I think part of the problem is that we don't have the supply, and that's why they're getting these prices. And until we get the supply, the prices are going to stay high.
Well, we have 288 units going in on Mac Bayou. So.
But I think there are some estimates on numbers we need, and there's a lot of them. I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I think this is a moderate income project, not affordable housing.
It's a workforce.
Workforce, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if the median income in 2020 was $31,000, well, it is countywide. I know that. I know that. I'm an educated person. I understand that. But I'm just saying.
I agree with you, though. The numbers are too high.
Yeah.
But I don't know any way to get them down except to have more supply.
Well,
I know that's not what everybody wants to hear, but that's going to be part of the solution to the problem.
I know how they do it. I understand that.
Yeah, did you have a question for him? Was that?
No, he had interjected
Okay.
something, and I was answering what he interjected, so.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Who else? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Morano.
Good evening, Commissioners. Barbara Morano, Morano. Welcome, Mr. Arnold. For my neighbors who don't know who I am, I'm on the board of South Walton Community Council. Unfortunately, I was not there in 2019 when probably all these neighbors came before you and asked you not to rezone the property. But it did. It was rezoned. And it was rezoned, it went through the TRC, it went through this planning commission, and went up to the BCC. I do believe the BCC at that time really understood or thought I really believe they were sincere about what they thought affordable housing was. In the developer's agreement, it says the purpose of working family housing is to provide reasonably priced apartments south of the bay. That was in the original agreement, and it's true what Mr. Brock said. They quoted a statute 420. Nobody realized what the average median income was at that time. Nobody realized at that time it was 140%, and that's what it is right now, Commissioner Tricker. It's 140%. This is the most expensive affordable housing complex in Walton County today as I stand here. The most expensive affordable housing. Why do I say that? Because the other apartment complexes that are coming through are 120%. Now, there were different players. Most of the Planning Commission probably was here. The BCC has changed. It changed hands from John King and to Mr. Brock. So I am not throwing the darts at Mr. Brock. He has a rezoned property. He has a developer's agreement that was agreed. And disappointingly enough for my neighbors and myself, this project is still very viable. Yes, you have traffic. Yes, they have concerns about the number of people in a one-bedroom apartment. Who's going to control that? And I believe, Commissioner Arnold, you brought that up. How do you control and how do you lease and how do you find out who goes where? And then you have a drainage problem. This apartment, this affordable housing complex, and I've said this before, is a strategy for companies to come in and rezone a property to come in and they can get more units, and they use the affordable housing strategy. I'm going to quote something from the Florida Housing Authority. And basically it says, the issue of whether housing meets the technical definition of affordable ceases to be a societal concern when the income of the occupant exceeds 80% or 120%. This project exceeds 140%. I just want to say, can that stop for a minute? Just stop for 1 minute. Mr. Brock was right. A 3-bedroom apartment, the price is going to be $2,534 for the 140% person. So what's the regular rates for the rest of it? This is the most expensive affordable housing project that you are going to see because it was rezoned. That was the big issue. And I'm hoping that when properties come before you to be rezoned, you see what happens. You see the problems, and your hands are tied right now because of decisions that was made before you. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like, yes, sir?
How's it going? My name is Michael Harbin III. My father is on the commission right now. Nothing I say hopefully will influence it. To just speak on some of the points, and I'm offering this as a youthful perspective because I don't think anyone is well into adulthood, except Mr. Kosin, of course. The first thing about the right or privilege to live at the beach, that's disgusting. 30 years ago, 20 years ago, when most of you were my age, you wouldn't have been able to afford the Gulfront homes or the, big homes that you live in today. And I also think you'd be very surprised at the amount of people my age in their mid-20s to late 20s that live at home with their parents.
Mr. Harbin, would you just direct it?
Sorry, they live at home with their...
Talking into the mic.
Yeah, they live at home with their parents. They live with multiple people. And these different places to live would offer a redistribution of people my age who don't want to live with their parents, who want to have their own place to live. And something, the only problem with this place, really, it just seems like the price, but everything's kind of expensive right now, no matter what market you look at. And then the most obvious thing is like population growth. I hate to point that out, but it's been growing. The past 30 years, I don't even know what the global population has gone up. I don't know what the United States population has gone up. There's a lot more people than there were. You got to put those people somewhere to sleep. That's not a that's not a hard thing to realize. And then also with the overschooling, I lived in Atlanta after my parents got divorced for about 10 years, and the entire time I lived in Atlanta through the public school system, I had classes in trailers year after year. More trailers were coming in. Buses of schools or kids were bussed in. This isn't a problem specifically down here. it's a huge problem that goes on in a lot of developing areas. And, you know, having places for kids to sleep with their families, you know, it's not gonna, the people are gonna keep coming. They're not gonna stop. The only problem is the rates are probably a little high. You know, I hate paying how much I pay for rent, but there's nothing I can do about it. I kind of like living here. I don't want to live in Atlanta anymore. So, you know, it's not a privilege to live down here. It's just it's a choice. Some people want to live here, and they shouldn't have to be priced out or told like, oh, we need to build mega homes instead, because that's so one-sided. You know, it should be the good for everybody and the growth of the community. So I'll leave it with that.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to speak on this? Yes, ma'am.
I'm just going to point out a couple of things. I live on East Mac Bayou Drive. My name is Ann Wallace. It's apparent to me that this is going forth, but what I'd like to know is when this zoning, because I've dealt with some other things, and I would like to not ever use the word affordable housing for any of these projects again, because there's nothing affordable about them. For the teller and the bank, I've talked to them. They said we can't afford that kind of rent. Especially we can't afford a first month and a last month's rent up front. So we don't even need to do it. We know that we need affordable housing in this county. So I say we get it. But I understood from someone in your planning and zoning that's very high up that we're 6 years out before there's any such thing as affordable housing on the books. So we are in a mess. However, when you start multiplying the problems that we have, Primrose is a great example. I'm sure y'all had all kinds of engineering things saying that, but go over there and see the flood of where they built that up and what we have to pass through every single day getting back to 98. And look at how long, and they are suggesting that the people that live down further back in Mac Bayou, like Driftwood Estates, they might take 35 to 40 minutes getting to 98 because of the traffic import. I think everybody deserves a place to live, but if they can't get to their work and they can't get through the traffic jams, and the only alternative is one way in and one way out for those people. Also, I'd like to ask the question, when you have a zoning change, you send out a public notice to all those surrounding areas.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me the distance.
300 feet.
Now, do you think there's anybody within 300 feet of Primrose that owned a home?
I don't know.
Nope. No, I mean, really, I know you don't. I'm saying.
Oh, I was going to tell you that it's not something that we have control over. That's a decision that's made.
That's
beyond. And you know what? If they advance it to a higher number, then we'll use the higher
Well,
number.
that's
But
what I'm saying. It
what
starts
we're
with the
required right
planning
now.
and zoning code. I would suggest
I know they've
that
discussed,
everybody
I know
goes
they have
back.
discussed making that wider, but I don't know where it's gone from there. But I
Because I
knew it's probably been
understood.
brought up.
You know, when that was brought up, not one person showed up. That came from the engineer that told me that. That meant that nobody got a public notice or a notice owner. Also, in Goldsby, you think anybody's within 300 feet of that? If there hadn't been for the flyers, nobody would have known about it. So that's my point. It's a done deal, but y'all need to change it and start changing it now.
I agree with that, 100%.
Does anybody else want to speak on this? Okay, we'll close it to public comments. Commissioners, you got
I
any
got a
questions?
question for the counselor. Based on what this lady said, this is, if I'm reading the BCC correctly, and you've got a better handle on it than I do, counselor, they're really behind in pushing, being proactive and making suggestions to make this a better place. Do we have the authority right here to ask the BCC to give them a suggestion on expanding this? Because I've actually done some homework on this, and we're in 300 feet, I think is the lowest required area in the state of Florida. Tallahassee, I've researched it, uses 1,000 feet because they're dense. It's the city, it's not out in the county. And if we increased that 1,000 feet by like 300 feet and change, we're talking a quarter mile. And it's no burden to the county, to the taxpayers to increase that. It's the developer has to pay that, not the taxpayers. Do we have the opportunity here to make a suggestion to increase the area of notification to a quarter mile and pass that to the BCC?
Not part of your purview, and I know these questions come up, but you are not a policy-making board, and your exact purview under Florida statute and the Walton County Code of Ordinance that task the planning board as the local planning agency is to hear these issues. Your role is not as a policymaker and not to provide advice on policy matters unless specifically tasked or requested to do so by the BCC. Nothing stops you as a citizen from talking to individual members of the Board of County Commissioners, just as anyone here in the audience can, including the commissioners who appointed you. But the board's role is to hear the matters before it, not to rewrite or propose draft revisions to the Land Development Code.
I think I'm getting a little overexcited about their word being proactive. I actually took it serious, so.
Well, they get to be proactive. Understand, advisory committees offer advice on the matter they are specifically tasked with, and that's by code, unless the BCC comes down and asks to do it. So it's not as though that they're not able to be proactive. It's just your question was, can this board do it? One, this board, no, couldn't, but you certainly couldn't even do it tonight simply because of the fact it wouldn't even be on your agenda. So it's outside your purview, but we can't do it as part of a quasi-judicial proceeding anyway.
Thank you, sir.
Question, would the planning department be able to put an agenda item out there or something like this for our consideration and our discussion?
Not without the Board of County Commissioners' direction.
Okay.
Planning staff doesn't get to come to you for their advice. They don't work for you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, what are you thinking?
You really want to know?
Did you, I'm sorry, yes, did you? Yes, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Please do.
I wrote down a couple of the high points here. Some discussion of backups on Goldsby. There's one thing I did forget to mention about all this. Of course, we're providing the turn lanes. We knew that was going to be an issue years ago as we got into this. During the rezoning, we also talked about the East Lamb connector. And as we were working through this process, actually, that was put out to bid by the BCC for the design process. So the connector road that will go from Goldsby over to West Hewitt is out for qualifications for design, so that's going to provide another benefit to this area. It's going to be a few years out before it gets there. Just wanted to note that that was another thing to consider. The Botany Bayou HOA member noted asked where does the water go. You know, that's not something we normally do. The very detailed flood study we did on this project, and a lot of it had to do with, you know, working with Haley, who is very inquisitive. She had a lot of questions, and I spent way more time on this project than we probably ever have, studying the flood and where water goes. I can say with a certainty that water off this site goes northeast through the Primrose project, and northwest through the Primrose project and west. There's two drainage basins. They both diverge out the north and the west, and then they converge together inside that Primrose property. So water does not go.
What are
to
you
that
required to
location.
maintain on site?
We are doing the 100-year storm, the 1 hour through 24-hour rain event. So it's about 14 inches of rain in a 24-hour period that we're actually detaining the rate control. Now, technically on this, we were only required to do that on the central area because it's inside of that wetland closed basin. We know it's a closed basin based on our analysis. So we only had to do it, but we went ahead and did it on the west discharge as well. So we exceeded on the west. So if any project is ever done well with stormwater, it's this one. We way exceeded what would normally be done. There was a note about a lot of cars on Goldsby again. I think I just had a note to be sure to talk about that that Lamb connector. And the setbacks specifically, that question was asked. So I wanted to tell you exactly what those were. The required for the front, this is front in Goldsby, the required was 20-foot setback, we provided 36. The sides on the north and the south, the requirement was 10 feet, we provided 14 feet. And on the rear, which is the west side, the requirement is 20 feet, we provided 132 feet. So, and then interior, there are no requirements for interior setbacks to buildings, but we put 30 feet between buildings. That's good for fire code as well as nice open spaces where we put the picnic and the grilling areas and things. And I think there was some notes about Primrose Flooding that came up. I've looked at that myself. I certainly would acknowledge that is a problem area. I've actually had some discussions with Public Works about that. I did a little work northwest of there, and Public Works recently put some new culverts in to help relieve that area a little bit, but they certainly have a lot of work to do on that. This project is not draining to that area, so it won't be adding to that problem. This project is draining out the west side of Primrose. Those problems are on the north side of Primrose.
When was Primrose developed? Do you know?
It's under construction currently. That's all I had.
All right, thank you. Okay, commissioners?
I have a question for the applicant.
Sure.
How did you devise your rent rolls?
The rent pricing we shared with you today was the workforce housing rates, and those are set by HUD limitations that are posted annually.
I'm talking just about your base rent. One bedroom,
base rent.
1,800.
Well, the 1,800 is the workforce housing units. The market rate units may exceed that. We're not positive yet. We're 2 years from advertising for lease. But we use Rangewater Property Management Company. They do market studies and assess wherever everybody else's rents are. I can tell you the market rates exceed the workforce housing rates currently. Not sure where they'll be in 2 years, depends on how the market acts. But our property management company, CoStar reports, and then we do our own kind of boots on the ground surveys of other apartments in the area.
The reason I ask, because your rates currently are the same rates all across the board in the market here. Did you do a projection with your return on investment, ROI?
Oh, yes, sir, of course.
What percentage is that?
My return on it, we underwrite to a 6% return. Yield on cost is what I should really say. My CFO is probably wanting to hit me right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
We've heard a lot, and just wanted to so is this project as submitted in compliance with the Land Development Code and the Comprehensive Plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I do agree, though, some of the statements that have been made that the median income in Walton County is way higher than your average place. That's because we got a lot of rich people that have moved in, and I guess that's a problem now. But that's going to be something the commission would have to take up as far as how to adjust those numbers and create more affordable housing or workforce housing. It's not something we can do here. But I do agree, there's some issues. Any other questions, commissioners? Comments?
I have some comments. Want to go first?
Well, I was just going to say, I think the most serious concern that I would have on this project is the safety concern. And I don't know that we have a mechanism for using that against this project necessarily, but I think it is something that we could and should forward to the BCC for their consideration. It's a serious concern the community has, and I think if there was positive action there, it might help alleviate some of the concerns. So I think over everything else we've talked about, I think to me that's the most serious consideration.
Well, they do have the 6-lane in process, and they're doing the turn lanes in there, but I don't know if that'll be enough because
Exactly.
I'm not
Yeah.
a traffic person, but
Exactly.
may not be. But no, sir, I'm sorry. Public comments are closed.
Okay, so here's some of my concerns. There's a lot of problems here, and it's not anybody's fault. It's not any one person's fault. It's not Matt Carpenter's fault. It's not the school district's fault. It's not the DOT's fault. It's a combination of everything. The people have been failed by your planning department because of lack of proactive and getting ahead of the power curve and trying to think out solutions before we get to this mess. And it's not just the planning department. The school district's guilty too. They give us these numbers that they say they have this magic formula that was made up in Tallahassee that they go by that tells us how many schools we can build and stuff. And we can see with our own eyes in reality, living here every day, day in and day out, it's not working. Everything they're telling us, well, we're in compliance. Well, it's not working. Where we've got as many schools as we're allowed to have, it's not working. We've got as many parking places as we are allowed by land development code, it's not working. We've got so many things that are broken that's not being fixed. And I'm trying my best to wrap my head around more housing, because we do need more housing. And I'm all about responsible housing with less density and more amenities to bring quality of life to the community. But the biggest thing that I see that is not the developer's fault on this, is the access onto 98 is a death trap. It is dangerous. You run up on that road, you jam on your brakes, you get knocked in, you get rear-ended, you try and get out, you accelerate as hard as you can. It's just a disaster. So I'm really trying to wrap my head around development. And secondly, I was talking to a friend of mine who's probably watching right now. His name is Robert Nelson. He is a statistic man. He's really good on numbers. And he said, did you know that there are so many projects in the pipeline right now that they have not even broken ground on in Walton County, that if we had a moratorium on all development right now, cease and desist, no more permits issued, we wouldn't even notice it for at least 5 years. There are that many projects in the pipeline. We've got thousands of apartments waiting to be built. And sometimes somebody's got to say, the statistics aren't working, and we need to believe what we see with our eyes and experience every day. So we can do better, and we can raise the bar, and this is gonna pass, because this board that you see before you right now is very heavy pro-development. So it will probably pass, but I can't support it.
Surprise. Well, Dan, you brought that up. That's the speech we've heard about at this table about the 15th time now. So I could have quoted it for you.
Okay.
But I won't. But I will tell you this, we've said it the same way every time. That's not our job. It doesn't come through here. We don't do that. If you want to go do what you just talked about and get something done, go talk to the county commissioners.
And the problem is
change the rules.
Okay.
We'll change the rules, okay?
And the problem is everybody is saying it's not my job. And who's suffering? The citizens of this county are suffering.
It's written in here, Dan. If you'd read some of this stuff, sometimes you'd know what our job is.
I've been reading quality
Because I get tired
developments.
of defending our position, what we have to do, because we get somebody like him up here grandstanding because he knows y'all are already upset. And I get tired of having to defend our position. That's what our job is.
Gentlemen, do you think we could take a vote here?
Sure, let's have a motion. We're fixing to vote on this project. All right, anybody want to make a motion?
I mean, if it's in compliance with land development code and the comprehensive plan, I don't know that we really have.
It is,
have a
it's actually
choice.
in our package that
Yep.
it complies with everything.
Well, I'll move to approve.
We have a motion.
I agree. It seems that it fits the, I agree that traffic and these other things are issues, but proper forum.
So is that a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Tanner, would you consider adding something to your motion related to the safety issue as a recommendation to the BCC?
No, sir.
Okay.
I'm not sure, can we recommend something on safety anyway?
I can't say we couldn't recommend anything, but without knowing what the recommendation was, I can't answer one way or the other to that.
Well, it doesn't, it's moot point anyway. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Opposed?
One nay. All right, motion carries. All right, Mac. Still Thursday?
Lee, I'm on.
All right, let's take a 10-minute break and we'll come back, y'all.
Representative Drake.
But at some point, if you got a situation that's,
Absolutely. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, it would be the state representative, state senators' offices that I think would have the most influence on that.
how you doing?
Welcome to the Jerry Springer Show.
Jerry Springer, I haven't heard that name in years, man.
Mac, y'all ready to get started again? Okay, we'll call it back to order. Next project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The next item on our agenda is number 4, the Dravenska rezoning. This has also been reviewed by Stephen Shaw, and I'll ask Stephen to introduce it for us.
Good evening again, Stephen Schoen, Planning and Development Services. For the record, I have been sworn. The Dravenska rezoning, this is a request to approve by ordinance. Project number REZ 22-000001 is a rezoning application submitted by Avcon Incorporated on behalf of Andre Dravenska, requesting to change the zoning district from village mixed use to coastal center mixed use with a future land use of mixed use on 2.34 plus or minus acres. The property is located in District 4 and can be identified by the parcel IDs in your staff report. If you could please enter that into the record.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. This was introduced last time. It was continued because of a misadvertisement. It was advertised as a legislative item. It should have been a quasi-judicial. That has been corrected this time around. I can answer any questions you may have about the application.
Stephen, is the change in zoning to avoid the requirement for residential use, or is?
No, it is not. It is to allow for general commercial. Both zoning districts allow for general commercial under the mixed-use land use. In the VMU land, or zoning, under 3 acres, it limits that commercial to neighborhood commercial only.
I see.
That is what they're doing
And this
here.
is under 3 acres?
That's correct.
Okay, understood, thank you.
And what's the rationale behind that limitation? For
I apologize for my ignorance there. I can't speculate on why that was included at the time. I mean, I could get into some of the sort of planning ideas behind more of a village-type development and that sort of setting, but as far as why it was included in this zoning category, I couldn't begin to tell you why.
Right. And what all could be put into coastal center mixed use? What's allowable? What uses?
A myriad of uses, generally the same under village mixed use.
Okay.
But in this instance, I guess we're avoiding that sort of discussion. But any sort of uses that would be allowed under the village mixed use are also allowed under the coastal center mixed use.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask just to?
Sure, go ahead.
To clarify. So the net change is, there isn't necessarily a net change except for there's a carve out under the VMU that if you're less than 3 acres. And so this zoning change is to that carve out because effectively the use case is the same. Is that correct?
I believe that's the driver, yes, to allow for general commercial use within the land.
And then at some point, we don't know when, but maybe it was outdated or not, but at some point there was a 3 acre limitation.
There is a 3 acre limitation. It's the threshold. If you're under 3 acres, you're limited to general or to neighborhood commercial. So they're under 3 acres. They would like to have a general commercial use or some other use that's not allowed currently with the VMU zoning.
Would you mind just answering one last question, which is what is the difference between the general, the neighborhood commercial use and the general commercial use? How would that?
General commercial use allows for a more intense commercial use. Neighborhood commercial is designed to be more neighborhood serving, less intense. You can't have drive-throughs and things like that. You can have sit-down restaurants, but not drive-through restaurants, things like that. So just a slightly less intense.
When you say intense, so it's not necessarily just sort of density; it's some of the other factors.
The character of development.
Character.
Yeah.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, well, let's hear from the applicant. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Stephen Tatum, on behalf of Mr. Dravinskas. I have with me tonight Julia Vitale. She is the engineer, one of the engineers on the project. I think I said your last name, right?
Yes.
Okay. Stephen did a great job of explaining what we're doing. There was a conceptual site plan in your packet that shows the general intent of what this is about. Essentially, want to create a kind of a business park, but not a business park like you would think of. It's more of a trades and services park. It's small warehouse areas with offices so that people can, like tradesmen, electricians, contractors, handymen, those kind of people can come in, rent the property, use it. One thing I do want to clarify, the original site plan that was submitted had one of the buildings labeled as golf cart rental. That was just a placeholder that was stuck in there so that people could see, these are the type of things that could locate there. There is no intent to rent to a golf cart rental place, but that doesn't mean we would not. There's not anybody in the pipeline for that. If somebody showed up and wanted to rent it, pay the price, then yeah, it could happen. But there's no intent for that right now. One of the other buildings that's shown on the site plan is a kind of a mechanics body shop type building. Mr. Dravinskas owns a upscale, he does many things, but he owns he works on upscale high-end cars. There's nothing like that in South Walton. And given the proximity now to the Porsche dealership that's going to be going in 2 parcels over, it just seems to make sense, and it's a good location for it. So as Stephen said, we are requesting it to get around the neighborhood commercial aspect. I agree with you, Mr. Tricker. I don't understand the rationale why the 3 acres is the cutoff for where you can have general commercial or neighborhood commercial. I will say, though, that in your packet, there is a breakdown on traffic studies that shows the different intensities that could happen even using neighborhood commercial. For instance, right now we're proposing roughly 20,000 square feet of office warehouse space on this property. It would be divided between 5 buildings, and you would have your parking infrastructure in place. If, let's say, a 5,000 square foot restaurant were to locate on this property, it would produce 49 p.m. peak hour trips. Our project will only produce 25 p.m. peak hour trips. Same thing with a bank. A bank with a drive-through, which is allowed here for some reason. So you couldn't have a drive-through restaurant, but you could have a drive-through financial institution. But the drive-through bank with its lanes being, about 6 lanes worth of bank tellers would produce 163 p.m. peak hour trips. So what we're producing is, or what we're requesting isn't exactly extremely intense. It just doesn't fit into that neighborhood commercial definition that's provided. And the county does have an actual definition of what neighborhood commercial is. And some of them are more intense than what we're doing, and some of them are less. So as far as the area around the property goes, I know there was a map included, but I'm going to give you guys another one since we're doing this quasi-judicial.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so what this shows is the general area. I didn't have a way when I created this to show you where the parcel is, but if you see right in the middle of your page, there's kind of a coppered color roof on a small building on the south side of 98. We are the 2 parcels to the left of that. To the right of that, to the east of that, is where the Porsche dealership is going. If you continue moving back towards the west, there's a large storage facility there, mini warehouse type facility. Beyond that, you've got the large lumber locators, Florida Bath and Services for fabricating cultured marble type stuff. Right pretty intense use, really, and probably not creating a lot of traffic, but it's an intense type use, loud type use. Going back the other direction, you've got that copper colored building where the arrow is kind of pointing at. That is a 8,900 square foot pet resort, which I wasn't aware that's what it was. I've passed it many times, but when I started looking into it, it looked pretty nice. So then, of course, we'll have the Porsche dealership beside that. Then we've got a little strip mall, and then another large move-it storage on further down to the east. And then across the road, we've got the strip mall area, Otto's Car Wash is right there. So, I mean, those are all allowed uses in their zoning categories. Some of those are right now zoned VMU. Some of them have other zoning designations. But in order for us to accomplish what we need to do, we would have to do one of two things. Well, one of three things. We either have to get this change, or we would have to throw in some sort of residential component into our project, which doesn't make sense. To throw in a few apartments in this project just doesn't make sense, especially in that location. But if we were to do that, then we wouldn't be having to ask for this today. Excuse me. Because the exemption, the reason that the neighborhood commercial is required is if you're under 3 acres, you do not have to do the mixed-use development side of VMU. But you can do a single use, but it has to have be the neighborhood commercial. So those were really the two options that you've got. Aside from that, we did have an environmental analysis performed that did not show any listed species present on site. The only one that could even be likely would be a gopher tortoise. If a gopher tortoise is located at some point, then it would be removed and per FWC requirements. At Planning Commission last time, before this got pulled, there was a comment about beach mice. And beach mice don't live on these properties. They live in the dune systems down near the beach, so that's not a concern. So aside from that, that's really all I've got to present to you right now, unless you've got any other questions.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, Stephen, I don't see any in our packet, but was there any concern or opposition from any of the neighbors?
No.
Okay.
I don't, as far as I know, Stephen, have you received anything?
No, I don't believe I have.
Okay. Okay.
May I just ask one quick question? You mentioned in that one example, which you weren't going to go down, but you might have to put something residential on there. With that small of acreage, that seems quite difficult to do, but you've clearly explored that. But to do that, is there, my understanding, is there some scope of what that residential has to be? Could it be just one house, or does it need to be sort of, multifamily in some way? And I don't want to go off on a tangent, because that's not the route you're going down. But since you had explored that route, I just thought I'd ask the question to learn.
The code is not clear, and we did not explore the route so much as we knew there would not be a market for a couple of residential units on there.
Yeah.
On that small of an area. I mean, I guess someone could buy it and build apartments on there. That would be about the only use you're going to get out of it. You're not going to put single-family homes in that location.
Understood.
Townhomes, things like that are not going to work.
Could you just say one more word again about the type of business that you think is going to go there? You said not a marketplace, but sort of trades and services.
Yes, sir. I think you have a site plan in your packet.
Yes.
And if you look at that site plan, and I happen to somehow left mine somewhere, but I've got a small version. But if you look at that, there's buildings in the back of the property away from 98. Those are designed to be like small office buildings with warehouse space for, I don't know, I liken it to, well, actually on Goldsby Road. If you go up Goldsby Road, up on the left, there's an old warehouse self-storage area that people have purchased and turned into, I guess they bought units or renting units, but they've turned them into little offices and they use the area next door for warehousing. That's kind of the intent of this, except it'll be done correctly. It won't be converted over type stuff. That's the way it'll be designed. It'll be designed for that purpose, so that you would have trade services in these locations.
Understood. So some office space, but the types of office space where you need some.
Something like that, yes, sir. The two buildings up near the front,
Plumbers, HVAC.
yeah, things along those lines.
Thank you.
I mean, or even, I guess, artists could rent it if they wanted to. It would make sense for an artist to have something like that as well.
Okay.
If you get closer to 98, the two buildings that are closer to 98, you see they're larger. The one that's on the south, or I'm sorry, on the bottom, which would be the west side, is the one that's designed to be a sort of the high-end body shop type work. And then the one on the other side is the one that would be kind of a floating, could be general sales, it could be a retail space. It just depends on who wanted to locate in it. Got one for me?
Just wondering what your end game is.
To make money. No.
Hey, it's the American
That's what
way.
you always.
It's the American way.
That is the end game. I'm hiding no cards. There's nothing hidden here. Andre saw an opportunity to purchase this property, and it made sense with what he does, with it being near the Porsche dealership going in. And there's no other high-end, as far as we know, car mechanics, they're not really mechanics, but car technicians in this area, in South Walton, as far as I know.
Motorsports.
Oh, yes, I forgot about motorsports, yeah.
So this is a garage to take your car to get fixed?
No, sir.
Within,
Not unless you're driving a Lamborghini.
okay.
If it has a body
I mean, it
shop
doesn't have to.
component, it'll do well.
It will do well. But it's not going to be your, air wrench pounding type.
John Johns.
Right.
Just trying to visualize it.
The only place I would know to compare it to is his other location, and it's in Destin. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. But he does a jam-up job. He does a great job specializing in this type of work. And then, buying that much property, a lot of it he doesn't need. Why not develop it and have these spaces and fulfill a need that really is out there? I know right now they're trying to get someone to develop something along these lines up here in Freeport because it's needed. And granted, this is only going to, fulfill 4 or 5 potential tradesmen's use, but and put a dent in what is a hurting market.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay.
All right, thank you, guys.
Open to public comment and then let you respond to any questions. Anybody in the audience like to speak on this? Yes, ma'am.
All right, Barbara Morano. Commissioners, I think you know what I'm going to talk about. It's rezoning. The Board of County Commissioners, they look very carefully at rezoning. They've never given you a directive, but it's their actions that have talked. An RV park, the Krups rezoning, and Sundial, those were all projects that SWCC spoke against, but this planning commission, 4-3, decided they wanted to rezone. It got up to the BCC level, and they said, no rezoning. This is a village mixed use. When you asked about, are there any concerns from the neighborhood? Well, you just send out something for 300 feet. I don't even think they sent out anything at 300 feet. They did? Okay. So who was on the 300 feet? How many people were there? I'm sorry? Okay. Well, anyway, I don't know how many people were on the list.
Well, I know that the county makes sure that that's done, so.
Okay. So village mixed use is really for neighborhood mixed use, and I know you brought that up, Mr. Arnold. There are neighborhoods around this property. Across the street, Bishop Tolbert Road, they're coming in with a planned unit development. You have Thompson Road, you have more apartments going in, you have apartments going in on Mole Road. You have people that live on 98. The applicant talked about the Porsche dealership. That came in through a back door. That came in through zoning board of adjustments. They made an adjustment, they gave them zoning, and they got it. That's not going to happen anymore. And that's a domino effect when you say, well, this one has changed, so I'm going to do my change. It did come in as a rental golf cart facility. Now, they changed that. Why? Because that's not going to go over very well, golf carts. But once you change something and rezone it, it's forever. It never goes back. And you might say, well, it fits the land development code, it fits the zoning area, only if it's changed. So right now, it doesn't fit. You have the right to say no, period. No is a complete sentence to rezoning. Property is zoned for a reason. In neighborhood, you could have a small-scale health and medical offices. We need that. We need professional offices. We need offices. We need people to do work. We have people who come here. You've heard of people who don't even have space for their offices. You can have a shoe store, sales store, clothing store, pharmacist, florist. We don't need another mechanical warehouse. And that's why will I stop automatically, or do you stop it, Lee?
I don't have control over it.
Okay, it'll stop. I mean, the applicant admitted they want to make a profit. I understand that, but it's not our obligation.
I'm sorry, I guess that the timer, yes. Apparently, when the timer goes off, that's it, so.
Well, that's fine. They're going to make a profit. We don't have to rezone for profit. Just remember that. Rezoning is a big dot deal, and it will go up before the
Thank you, Ms.
BCC.
Morano.
And I will
Appreciate it.
say the same thing.
Yes.
You don't have many people, and I'm going to come back again on the next one. I hope it can be a little bit more than 3 minutes. No one else, I can understand.
We've
when
already
you have-
established a 3-minute on it tonight, so.
Fine,
we're
I'll
gonna
be
stick
back
with it.
again for the next rezoning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to speak on this? Okay, we'll close public comments. Did y'all need to respond to any of that?
First of all, the profit, make money was said in jest. I was tongue-in-cheeking
That's
that.
the
Because that's
American
what I
way.
always hear. I mean,
It's
that's
the
what I
American-
always hear at BCC is, they're wanting to make a change so they can make more money. Well, I mean, yeah, everybody's about money. I mean, that's why we're all here. But that's not the only reason.
Not the ones that are retired and don't want anybody else to move in.
That's why we all ended up in South Walton County. Maybe that's the way I should say it. As far as, Ms. Morano had a good point. We do need a place for people to work. That's exactly what this is providing. That's the whole design behind this. It's a shame that we have to ask for a rezoning for this, although I don't believe rezonings are evil. I know that comes as a surprise to at least you two. But they're not a bad thing. Rezonings, especially in this case, where it's basically a lateral move. I mean, the entitlements under VMU and the entitlements under Coastal Center Mixed Use are almost the exact same thing. And actually, we have less density that we could use under Coastal Center Mixed Use than we would under VMU. Not that we're wanting to use density, but if we were going to do that, we're actually giving ourselves less opportunity by making this change. But essentially, it's a lateral move so that we can develop the way we want to develop, the way that needs to be developed, and avoid a LDC provision that I don't know that any of us can justify. So unless y'all got anything else for me, that's it.
Any other questions? Yes,
I have
sir.
a question for planning. Does planning have an opinion on whether this is an appropriate zoning change or not? In your professional opinion?
We have no objection to this proposed change.
It's not the question. Is it appropriate, do you think? Is
If
it
the Board of
be-
County
is it-
Commissioners thinks it's appropriate, they will approve it.
In your opinion, is it the best use of the property, of this property?
Have I done a highest and best use analysis? No, sir, I have not.
Thank you.
I got a question for Mac. Is there any way to avoid these arguments over whether to change zoning or not? Is there any type of land development code or any type of guidelines that tell you when you can or cannot change zonings? And is there any overlays? Is there any real plan as far as what's going to go on these properties? Because I understand Kristen's working on something in Freeport where there's overlays involved, and she's working with the city of Freeport. Any of that apply here?
The US 331 Economic Development Corridor overlay that will go from the north end of the bridge to the intersection of Highway 20 right outside this building and east on Highway 20. Yes, that's presently proposed. This is actually in an overlay district called the US 98 331 Scenic Corridor.
Do we have any guidelines on what would be justification for changing zoning, or is that just kind of like up for argument?
Yes, sir. There's some specific guidelines that we have to consider when an application to change zoning or future land use is identified. And we address each of those questions in the staff report, where we look at water, sewer, solid waste, stormwater, transportation, recreation, and things of that particular nature. This one does not appear to make a material change in the external impacts of this particular parcel. They're not requesting an increase in density. They're proposing not to do density at all. This is a mixed use future land use and a mixed use zoning right now. It's a very small parcel. Years ago, the board decided that on very small parcels, it was virtually impossible to develop a mixed use project of any quality because you didn't have enough land. So in that particular case, they said, we'll let you do a single use project if the parcel is less than 3 acres because of that hardship of being able to create a bona fide mixed-use project of quality on that small of a parcel. And so they provided the opportunity to do a single use. And in that context, they suggested, well, on these small parcels, we should have something typically less intense that would be more neighborhood serving. So we're going to limit that to neighborhood commercial, which could still be a restaurant. There are a number of things in neighborhood commercial that could go on this particular site. And that was the offset to doing a mixed use. If you don't want to do mixed use, you don't get to do the full general commercial that you do if you do a mixed use. That was really the thinking behind that. And in this particular case, it is a small parcel. It's in between 2 developed sites. We're actually not supposed to consider any proposed use when we look at zonings or rezonings or future land use changes. We analyze what could possibly go there and the maximum impact of that. And that's what we've done. In this particular case, we don't see that those impacts are going to be significant outside of this particular project.
So does coastal center mixed use allow for single use?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Matt, Steve, can you explain the process behind the rezoning and why we have that in there, in our land development code? Because I think we discussed it before. It's a living document. It's not something that was chiseled in stone when the powers that be granted their land uses back in the day, because things have changed. So that's why they gave us this.
Well, I'll key off of your term. Like the Constitution, so often a zoning map for a county, like Walton County, is not intended to be a static document. The intention is that as the economy develops, as infrastructure develops, as things change in any given area of the county, that it's not only appropriate, but it's encouraged that rezonings occur. I think my only problem with our current discussion about rezonings, if I can just express my personal opinion, or I guess it's a legal one if I'm saying it, it's important to not just demonize rezoning as a process, because it's a legitimate process if it's applied legitimately. It's a necessary process. So no rezoning, it doesn't make much sense. The idea that, yes, has rezoning been utilized improperly in the past? Has it been focused on increasing property values rather than compatibility issues? No doubt about it. It happens in every jurisdiction. But now we're working harder all the time to try and get off of the project-related, future project-related focus, as Mac was talking about, and instead focus on compatibility, infrastructure, environmental resources on the site, and frankly, where the county commission wants to move the economy within the county.
Thank you. Any other questions? Did we close public comment? I guess we did, didn't we? Okay.
Can I ask just one?
Sure.
May I ask, just to clarify, the difference in zoning that we're is to use mixed use in this small section. And so is that the single use versus a mixed use, is that specifically related to the use of multiple buildings in that area? Would a single use satisfy that if there's sort of one building?
No, sir, it's not about the number of structures on the site, it's about the type of uses and having multiple uses as defined by our code.
And the multiple uses in this case would be the office as well as those other, the warehouse. That's how it falls in the multiple use, is that correct?
Well, under village mixed use, yes, office, warehouse.
Understood.
A restaurant, those would be examples.
Thank you very much. And then I guess the other question is it relevant to consider what is the adjacent zoning or those type of questions, whether it's, does that impact the decision?
Yes, sir, it absolutely does. We look at the compatibility of uses that are allowable on the adjacent sites compared to what this particular site is proposed to change to. And we've essentially got village mixed use, I think, on each side. We've got a mixed-use development on each side. The veterinary office actually has an apartment above it, so it effectively becomes a mixed work.
Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions, thoughts, comments? All right. Motion?
I'd like to make a comment, just so that when I vote the way I do, you'll understand where I'm coming from. The only way I know to explain this is if you've ever been bitten by a dog, from now on, you're gonna watch that dog. You don't want to get bit again. And for what you just said, has there been foul play involving rezoning? And has there been less than honorable maneuvering? And we've seen it. We've seen it right here. And I'm not saying that's you. I really don't believe that's you. But I've been conditioned, and I've seen more times than not, that when you rezone, there's regrets later. So what I'm going to probably do is what we do every time, and we're going to defer this to the BCC to make their opinion. And just based on past experience and based on what I've seen the BCC do, I'm not comfortable with changing zones at this time. So there's my comment.
Okay, anybody else? All right, we need a motion. You look like you're ready.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Mr. Chairman, the next item on our agenda is number 5, the Emerald Bay rezoning. This rezoning request has been reviewed by Kelly Schultz, but we have Stephen Schoen standing in for her today.
Good evening. Again, Stephen Schoen, Planning Development Services. To remind you, I have been sworn. This is the Emerald Bay rezoning. This is a request to approve by ordinance, project number REZ 22-000003. That was reviewed by Kelly Schultz. This is a rezoning application submitted by Caprine Engineering LLC on behalf of Emerald Bay Commercial 09 LLC. They're requesting to rezone from coastal center to coastal center mixed use with a future land use of mixed use on 5.02 plus or minus acres. The property is located in District 4 and identified by the parcel ID in your staff report. If I could have the staff report entered into the record, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I could do my best to answer any questions that you may have for staff. I will have to borrow Mr. Carpenter's book because I did not get the staff report, but I'm happy to work through those questions if you have them.
Anybody got any questions for staff?
I guess, is the drive-through restaurants the leading driver for this rezone? Okay. Thank you.
Which restaurant?
Please be a
I mean, I'm just curious. That could be the deciding vote.
What do you want it to be, Michael?
Is it a Chick-fil-A?
No. Handle that traffic.
That's right, yeah.
You don't want to go there.
Sorry, Stephen, we got carried away. Go ahead. Is that all you got?
I'm like I said, I can certainly attempt to answer any questions. Like I've said, and Mr. Carpenter said, Kelly is the one who reviewed this, but I'm happy to dig through her report to find any answers you may need.
All right, thank you, sir. We'll let the applicant speak then. See if Michael can get any answers out of him.
Good evening. My name is Chris Heckroyd. I'm with Caprine Engineering. Yeah, that's all right. Everybody gets it wrong. Last name is Eckroate. I am the civil engineer for the project, and we are requesting a rezoning from coastal center to coastal center mixed use for two real reasons. One is which coastal center does not allow drive-through restaurants on this property, and the other in the land development code for properties greater than 5 acres, there's a residential requirement as part of that. And we don't have a desire to develop residential on this property at this time. We're limiting it to commercial. One of the things I want to point out is that we're not requesting any sort of future land use map change. The zoning that we are requesting is within the mixed use future land use designation. And a brief synopsis of the project will be that we do want to bring 2 quick service restaurants. I can't tell you who they are, but I can confirm that the Chick-fil-A won't be one of them. There's one just down the road from them, so it's a little too close. But then the complement of the property, which would be developed in a second phase, would be around 15,000 feet of general retail. The reason for the 2 phases are, the quick service restaurants are something we can deliver immediately, and there is a little bit of cleanup we got to do. There's some structures that encroach upon this property that need to get gone in order for us to be able to develop the second phase of the project. But as part of the first phase, we will develop the frontage road, we will develop the driveways, we will develop the quick service restaurants. The environmental assessment picked up that this is a gopher tortoise and an eastern indigo snake habitat. We'll do some critter surveys before we move any dirt and cut any trees and relocate animals if there are any out there. The traffic assessment was done. We analyzed it. I saw a comment in the staff report that says I didn't really understand it, and I failed to talk to Kelly before this meeting about it to get a little bit of clarification. But we did analyze the development based on full build-out for both phases, although we only intend to do the phase 1 at this point, or at least in the near term, with the second phase anticipated to come within 5 years or so, depending on how the leasing goes. The traffic report did say for westbound 98, upon which these properties do front, we're within the allowable, I'm sorry, the term, I had it memorized before I came up here, but it's escaped me. But it is still within the level of service for westbound 98. The eastbound is already at a minus 74 trips for the level of service, and our project would add about 35 trips on top of that. So we would have to mitigate that through the proportional fair share program. We are maintaining some robust offsets for our development, the footprint of our development off the rear property lines. Our rear property line does abut the Emerald Bay Golf Course and some of the residences over there, and we're trying to maintain a robust buffer requirement over there. We're just over 59 feet on one of the footprints, and I want to say just shy of 40 feet. Within those footprints, within those buffers off the rear, we're intending to have some of our detention, which would, meet the standards of the Northwest Florida Water Management District, but they also, it's anticipated to have copious amounts of landscaping back there to screen the golf course. Off the front and sides, we're complying with all the LDC requirements in the Highway 98 Scenic Overlay District, where our frontage road doesn't encroach within the 25-foot setback. And we haven't gone through a full design process with the FDOT, but we have reached out to both the FDOT and staff and talked about our site plan and showed them our site plan, and they feel like at this time we've provided something, and I hope you have that in your staff report, but we have provided something that's compliant with the scenic overlay and the LDC, and will ultimately get approved by FDOT with the driveways that we're proposing there. At this time, I think I hit all the high points. We do have underground utilities. We've gotten our utility letters satisfied. We've tried to check as many things off the list as we can. So at this point, I'll conclude what I'm saying and be open to any questions you may have.
Okay. Mr. Tatum, do you have something?
Oh, okay, sure. And y'all know this guy.
Sorry to make y'all look at me again. Stephen Tatum again for the record. I just wanted to add in a couple of things on this on behalf of the applicant. I know a lot of the problem that people might have with this particular change is, well, they're trying to put in fast food restaurants, and we don't like fast food restaurants. So I went and looked. How many fast food restaurants do we have from the gates of Sandestin to the Okaloosa County line? Pretty highly populated area we're talking about, pretty much the most intense. There's actually 7. So you've got the Chick-fil-A, Whataburger, Taco Bell, McDonald's, Culver's, and then the Panera and Starbucks that are at Silver Sands. But that's a 4.5-mile span of Highway 98. 7 fast food restaurants in the most densely populated area of Walton County. So, it just stands to reason that that's a good idea to let's allow a few more of those, because I don't know about you guys, but my days are packed. I'm on the road a lot in between meetings, and you don't have time to stop every day and go into a restaurant, and it really gets tiring driving by Hardee's and now Arby's, I guess, there in Destin. So it would be nice to have some variety coming in. Aside from that, I've got a little map for you that wasn't included in any package, but I put it together today.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so what we've got here is the zoning map for the area from Silver Sands back towards our project. Our project, as you know, is directly to the west of Golf Gardens, and I'm sure you know where that is. The red, you may not be able to make it out real clearly, but the red colored areas are areas of existing coastal center mixed use. So it's not uncommon to have the small pockets of them located throughout, particularly when you're trying to accomplish something like we're trying to accomplish. As Chris said, the zoning designation for the parcel right now would require us, under coastal center as it is, would require us to put residential in, just like last time I was up here. We would have to have a residential component in this project, right there on 98, right at the front. There's no demand for that. And the owners of this property have owned it ever since Emerald Bay was developed. You know, Emerald Bay is a DRI. It expands both Okaloosa and Walton counties. They didn't include this property in that because all along the intent was for it to be commercial. So it's been intended to be something commercial for a very long time. The owners had just held on to it until the future got here, until it was a time and a demand to do it, and the demand is here now. And they were approached by these restaurants that wanted to locate here. So it's not uncommon to have these little pockets. It doesn't hurt anything. It's not increasing any intensity of use. The only thing it's allowing is a drive-through and getting rid of having to have a residential component. But that was just my 2 cents worth I wanted to add on top of what else had already been said.
Thank you, sir. All right, we'll open up to public comments. Anyone like to speak on this? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Donna Johns, JOHNS. This is right in my neighborhood, okay? So I'm very familiar with this area, and I'm very familiar with how the traffic is in this area. And according to the executive summary online, the eastbound segment of Highway 98 is already over capacity and does not meet the requirements for transportation concurrency. So it's telling you the road is already saturated. We don't have enough room for any more cars. And let me tell you, the Burger King that's on 98, the new Burger King, has experienced issues with cars lining up along Highway 98 to turn in there. That's a problem. There aren't turn lanes to go in there. That's really an issue. And we would have the same issue there. That area of Holiday Road is like the #1 hotspot for accidents. They're daily. And this is not far from that. So if you're going to have all these cars turning in to two, not one, but two different fast food restaurants, there's going to be a lot of accidents. It's a safety hazard. We are over capacity, as Mr. Tatum just said, the most densely populated area. And he's absolutely right. We are overwhelmed. Our infrastructure is not there. We just don't have the room for this. I don't have a problem with the 1,500 square foot retail that they want to do. And I probably wouldn't have too much of a problem if they were putting in one fast food restaurant. But two fast food restaurants, there's just not going to be enough room for cars to go in and out. We have a nightmare right now already with cars coming off of Highway 98, flying down Forest Shore, going south on Holiday Road, and then they cut through Smith's Antiques, they cut through Culver's. It's a nightmare, and that's what we're dealing with on a daily basis right now. It's not getting any better, it's getting worse. We just don't have the room, the infrastructure in place, or anything else for two fast food restaurants. And I ask that you don't allow that. Thank you.
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Lori Eccles, ECHOLS. Nobody likes to eat any better than me. I love it. But nobody also hates traffic as much as I do. And just so you know, the people in Emerald Bay already can't get out of their neighborhood. And where this thing is, where these two places are going, you got the Botanic, because it's not the golf course. It's right now, let's just say it's Botanic until it's not. You got Botanic here with a light, so you got Holiday, then you've got the light at Botanic, which is whatever that road is, that Driftwood. Then you're gonna have another exit out of Botanic or whatever ends up there on that property. Then you're gonna have these two more places that you turn into and turn out to right next to Emerald Bay that has no light whatsoever for these people to take a left or right. Now you've got 3 lanes and 3 lanes. You got 6 lanes this way, 6 lanes this way. And one of the main reasons that the county commissioners are even wanting to put a light at Driftwood is so the people don't have to cross 3 lanes of traffic in order to get over to the other way. So why would you put 2 fast food restaurants that everybody's going to want to come to that's renting a place in Miramar Beach or anywhere else? How are you even going to have a left turn lane to get in there when the traffic's already backed up past Sherwin-Williams to even get the Holiday? So I just don't understand it. Not that I wouldn't love to see it. I don't care. I know people have to eat, but there's no way that the traffic can support it, especially if you've got 650, 700 cars coming out of an apartment complex that y'all approved. So you've got all those people coming out at this light, then you've got them turning out to go to the right anyway. Then all those people are going to have to wait here while these people are waiting to get into, hopefully I'm sure y'all pass it. But anyway, hopefully it's a Zaxby's. But I'm just saying, y'all have got to think about this. Got to think about what you're doing. I know you say that, oh, it's up to the BCC, but it really isn't. Because this one over here, Mr. Atkinson, he goes to the BCC and he says, and they say, well, what can we do? Was it approved by everybody? Yeah, it was approved by everybody. And if y'all don't vote for it, we can get sued. Oh, we don't want to get sued. They've got hundreds of lawsuits against the county. Good Lord, Walton County's got tons of them going on. But that's what you do. You tell them if they don't pass it because these people have passed it, technical review people have passed it, everybody's passed it. So they pass it because you say they're going to get sued. So somebody needs to make a decision on what we're going to do in this county.
Thank you, ma'am.
For the record, I don't believe I ever told the board they're going to get sued if they don't follow the planning board's recommendation. I've told many boards, however, that they are required to make a decision in quasi-judicial proceedings based on competent substantial evidence. So they have to listen to the evidence presented in the hearing before them and determine if there's competent substantial evidence upon which to base their decision, whether it be approval or denial. If they have competent substantial evidence, either way, they can support that. On legislative issues, they can do whatever they please and can freely reject the planning board's recommendation, and they've heard that many times.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Well, Commissioners, you just heard from 2 residents that live in Miramar, that work in Miramar, that sleep in Miramar, that shop in Miramar. And if you take that 2 times 500, this room would be full because everyone feels exactly like those 2 residents. I thank Mr. Tatum for saying there's 7 fast food restaurants in how many miles? 4.5 miles? That sounds pretty good to me. You're approving 2 fast food restaurants. Why? I think before you rezone this, you have to say why. They can make a profit from just this land. They can put professional offices there. They can put a sit-down restaurant there. They've got a good deal. This is going to be a profit. Remember, no is a complete sentence. You don't have to say why you don't want to rezone it. But why are you rezoning it? For 2 fast food restaurants? Commissioners, please. I've stood before you before, and you approved something rezoned. But now, I even think this is more intense. This is a more intense use. People need medical facilities, they need they need a neighborhood, they need what's allowed in the coastal center. I can read it out. I mean, professional offices such as accountants, attorneys, engineers, doctors, financial institutions, etc. specialty food store. Think about this. If you approve it, you're approving 2 fast food restaurants in an area that does not need that. Miramar is overloaded. And I believe what Ms. Johns said, trying to turn into a fast food restaurant, she was even willing to compromise 1. I think that's more than what she should have even said. This is a serious rezoning. You can see the gray-haired men here. I mean, this is serious. This means a lot to them. But what does it mean? What is our vision for Walton County? What do we want for Walton County? You don't have to rezone this. You don't have to give them an answer. This is not about supply and demand. We've got the supply of fast food restaurants. What do you want Miramar to look like? Please think about that.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else want to speak on this?
Mr. Chairman, no one has asked, but we did have a written comment submitted in response to this application. And in the interest of balance, because this individual is normally here for these, but it could not be here tonight. And this comes from Mr. Jim McDowell, 690 Walton Way, Miramar Beach. I write to you today to express my support for the proposed rezoning request. The request to rezone from coastal center to coastal center mixed use so that 2 restaurants with drive-through service can locate in this already commercialized area of Miramar Beach. It is in keeping with the character of our Whispering Oak subdivision. We see no environmental issues in this project. I do not believe that any adverse impacts on the residential neighborhoods to the northeast of the rezoned property will come from this proposal. But several positive impacts for the residents can result as the 2 proposed phases are built and in operation. As you may be aware, I'm very concerned with the environmental issues and quality of life issues in Miramar Beach, especially the terrible botanical Miramar Beach proposed for the golf garden property next door to this. However, I do not have the same concerns associated with this proposal. Please get this put on the Citizen Serve portal for the project whenever you can.
Thank you, Mac. We'll close public comments at this time. And commissioners, you got any questions, comments?
I have a question for planning. Same question as the last project we looked at. So it looks like this is a big departure from what Coastal Center contemplates. So, same question as before. Is this change the best use for this particular piece of property? What is your feeling on it professionally?
We are comfortable with this particular change. This is an already commercialized area. This intent, according to the applicant, was to always be commercial. The coastal center zoning or future land use at the time that was placed on this property was placed on it November 7, 1996. So we're approaching 25 plus years of this particular designation on this property. We've had significant change and growth in our county in that period of time. This would be consistent with the growth that we've seen.
Thank you.
Anybody else got anything?
I'm going to stick by the comment on the previous request to zone change. Based on past experience, I'm very leery of it. That does not mean it's going to have anything that you do that. But I would like to put something on my wish list that Ms. Morano made. As a disabled veteran and a senior citizen, I would really love to see more medical facilities because I have to drive to Eglin. I have to drive to Baptist Hospital in Gulf Breeze. I have to go to Baptist Hospital in Pensacola. I've got some issues, and we have no Sacred Heart is maxed out. A lot of these things that are zoned where they could be medical facilities, we really need that in Walton County. We need medical facilities. And when I get lucky, every now and then, I might find a doctor over in Crestview that can take care of some things. But if there's a such thing as a wish list, we need more medical.
Mr. Cosin, could I address that directly? Sacred Heart is presently looking for a 30-acre campus near Defuniak Springs. It will require rezoning to do that. But they are looking for that, and we're encouraging that and working with them to hopefully find the appropriate location. I completely agree with you.
Thank you, sir.
Mac, I have a question for you. This may sound kind of off the wall, but the traffic that Miss Eccles references on Forest Shore Drive, it's real and it's unfortunate. I've recently noticed that the navigation in my vehicle actually encourages me to take that route. Is there a way that them as citizens or in the county inquire with Google or Apple and try to see how they have that street classified and see if it can be changed so that it doesn't automatically steer tourists who are not familiar with this area down that road?
That is not an uncommon problem when we have large amounts of construction. A number of the navigation services will look for alternate routes. That's part of their the design of those. And unfortunately, sometimes that shifts traffic to roadways that, in my case, I got shifted to one that didn't even actually exist. But we recognize that problem. I'm not sure, other than complaining about those kinds of things to those services, that there's much we can do about it other than making sure that the construction gets done as quickly as possible, because that will change it.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Well, wouldn't most of the traffic that would be going to these places be from that general area anyway? And that, how that works for, I'm not going to drive out of my way to go to a fast food restaurant. Yeah.
I wish I was a traffic engineer by specialty, but I'm a site development engineer. I did hire a traffic engineer to look at it. She consulted with the Florida DOT. She consulted with the Land Development Code. They vetted this thing. Intuitively, I would agree with you that most of this traffic most of the vehicles that would be entering and leaving this site would be, traffic that's already there, but that's not how they analyze these things. They have their process that's defined by the Land Development Code and the Florida DOT, and that's what they complied with, and that's what the numbers reflect. A couple of things I just wanted to at least respond to regarding the entrances, regardless of the rezoning, whether this remained coastal center. The Florida Access Management Manual would allow two right-in, right-out entrances, regardless of the zoning. Any development that would be proposed here would generate some traffic. So we've already got we're working within the situation that we have. We're trying to provide offerings for a good mixed commercial use. A good development often does, and good commercial centers have a variety of offerings, and we're trying to reach that regarding whether the future 15,000 feet has a medical facility, and that's a possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen because I'm not the developer, but that's a possibility. It could be a sit-down restaurants. It could be a veterinary hospital. It could be along with the two fast food restaurants that we have now. Like I said, the phase 2 of the development, we have some things we got to clean up on that phase 2 area before we can proceed with it. But could it be professional offices, or could it be restaurants? Could it be a number of things? Yeah, as long as it fits within the allowances of the zoning. Sure, it could be. I'm sorry, I had another point I was going to make, but
Welcome to my world.
yeah, the gray hair, yeah, my memory. I'm older than I maybe look. I don't know. At least I feel that way sometimes. A couple of more planning commission hearings, and I'll get there. Really. So. But in any case, our desire is for commercial. I loved how you termed it, that the zonings are a living document, and we understand that, and we understand the difficulty that you're in dealing with a volatile situation. I was 10 minutes late to this meeting just trying to fight the eastbound traffic on 98. I get it. The methods we use are defined by your land development codes and the FDOT. We have several people that we're trying to balance here, and the market, and the desires of the community. So we felt like we're putting forth, we're providing something and showing you something that has a good use here and will be successful. And we understand the nuances of the code from 1996 may not have foreseen where we are today, but here we are today, and we're requesting consideration and hopeful approval of, or at least a positive response as we move forward through the process.
Can I
Go
ask
ahead, yes.
a quick question? You're talking about traffic, and my belief and my notion, in terms of the economy in the Northwest Florida area, is that it's obviously driven by the military. It's driven by a lot of, education, but also by tourism. So when you say the notion that a lot of, and maybe this is beyond the scope, but that a lot of the traffic, is probably local, and there's been a lot of commentary about the traffic is, by all these people moving down. But, I imagine tourism is quite a big portion of that. And would the nature of the traffic, more people coming through, needing to eat, like these type of things, or these types of considerations, or the nature of the traffic, or is that beyond the scope of what a traffic study is?
It's beyond the scope of maybe my expertise.
Because you can just look and see a lot of license plates, and so that was.
Well, I see them when I drive down. I'm from Alabama, and we see them all the time. I burn up 65 a lot, so heading south. So I don't know that I can answer your question. That's more of a regional planning type. You should be asking, I assume you have a regional planning commission around here that y'all would work with to develop all these land development codes and all these kind of different zones and corridors and overlays. And that's probably a better question posed to them.
But the nature of, folks, I guess, coming from town, and there's some sort of, the notion of 4.5 miles and the number of fast foods. Is there some sort of like, for that type of thing, or the number of, some commentary about the number of fast food restaurants over a time period, but it does seem that if there's a lot of folks coming through, there's eating needs is where I'm trying to go with that.
Yeah, let me say I'm a civil engineer. I do a lot of development for development type work. I move dirt and water. But I do work with developers, and I have an opinion about that the market generally drives these sorts of things. And you can have a restaurant that maybe lives for a period of time and then eventually goes out of business because a worldwide pandemic hits. And it's replaced with a medical facility or a vet or a golf cart rental place. The market drives those sorts of things.
Understood.
But again, I don't know that I'm entirely qualified for that. Just a lot of exposure to it is maybe why I'm offering that opinion here.
No problem. I appreciate that. And one last question, which is on the retail component.
Sure.
You mentioned 15,000 square feet, I believe.
More or less. It's not ironed out, but that's what we're proposing at this point.
And that's down the road a little bit from the Silver Sands. And you said, but it could be a variety of things. It could be proper retail, or it could be professional offices or medical offices. I also feel there's a need for medical offices, and did some work on different, but you're saying it could be any of those things, and it's all on the table?
That's market driven.
Understood.
This developer and landowner, they're comfortable dealing in the retail and commercial retail type environment, which would include restaurants and the things that I mentioned. And that's what they're proposing here, because that's what they're comfortable with. But he's also a businessman, and if there was a need for roughly, a 3-acre, like medical, I'm trying to think of a brand name, but you know what I'm talking about, a dock in a box or something like that. I think he's willing to listen. But at this point, we're putting the proposal forward that we foresee for how this will develop. But if somebody comes to the table and it's, again, market driven, I think he's a businessman and will definitely listen.
Understood. Thank you.
All right.
Maybe you'll open up a parking lot.
Mac, I got a question.
Am I good?
Yeah, you're good. I'm sorry. The current zoning, what are they allowed to do in there now? I think Mr. Tatum hit on that, but I just wanted to double check.
We've got a recap of coastal center and coastal center mixed use zoning code, beginning page it is. I'll run through the primary uses.
That'd be great. I'm just trying to see what the differences are here, because I know y'all are looking for the drive-through.
Well, here's a couple of big differences. Coastal Center requires a residential component. It's primarily a residential category.
Which is probably not a great place for residential right there on 98.
And right on Highway 98, unless we're doing an apartment complex, probably not.
Right.
But
I don't think they want that.
nobody that's going to build a $2 million home wants to be backed up highway.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to sell that. So removing the requirement that a portion of Coastal Center development have to be residential is a significant difference in this particular case. The other primary difference has to do with the allowance of a drive-through for something other than a financial institution. It's limited to financial institutions in Coastal Center. It's not in Coastal Center mixed use. Those are probably the two most significant changes.
So could they build the restaurants now? With
Yes,
the
they
existing?
can.
Okay,
But
that's
they
my
would have-
question. So really the only difference we're seeing here is.
But they
the
would have to do a residential component also. in the
Residential
project.
component and the drive-through. That's the differences. Okay.
Most of the other
Sorry,
uses are
Ms.
similar.
Morano, the public comments are closed. I'm sorry, what'd you say, Matt?
Most of the other primary uses are very similar, if not exactly the same.
Okay. All right,
Those are the two
Commissioners,
significant differences.
y'all got any questions? Comments? Mr. Cozen?
Best news I've heard all day is Max said they're going to put a major medical facility into Funiac Springs.
I couch that in the terms of a proposed rezoning, if they can find a site.
It's going to be quite a dilemma for you.
It'll be near our house. We need it. We absolutely do.
That's something that should be on the priority list.
We do.
Chairman Perry, I'll move to approve.
Have a motion? We've closed public comments, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, we've already closed public comments. All right, Commissioners, we have a motion. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
All right, motion carries. Mac, is that all? Is it still
Yes, sir, that
Thursday?
concludes our agenda tonight.
All right, good deal.
Thank you.
And it's before midnight.
You have residential?
Me too.
No, we're.
I'm sorry, yes, we have a motion to
Under
adjourn.
uses.
Sorry.
Right?
It doesn't say required, to say the other.
You just got to start bringing your drinks with you now.
Right.
Right here. Right there.
New development projects that are less than greater than 5 will be required.
Mix of two uses.
2 uses.